I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players. And for the first time in like 7 months, we are not coming to you live at 3 o'clock Eastern.
And it's not Blur's Day. It's actually, what day is it? Thursday.
It's a Thursday. It's actually a good Thursday because this is a special CRM Players because, well, usually we'd be on at 3, but this is so good we had to come on at 1:30 East Coast time because we're going to do something that we have actually never done before.
What would that be?
I was hoping you knew. Okay.
No one. I'm surprised that you are.
Well, actually, we're kind of giving it away because of your background there. I'll actually bring it to the foreground here and
get back in the picture.
There it is. So, hey, this is the very first CRM Players Executive Roundtable Conversation Broadcast, live stream, whatever you want to call it.
Event.
Event. It's kind of exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's us our first, really. And look at the team we got here, man. And they're all here. Yeah,
they are all here, and we're going to bring them to you in a second. But before we do, we're going to kind of give you some of the flavor of what this next actually 2.5 hours is going to be. It's kind of supersized, but I think it's good because we are going to have a really awesome roundtable conversation, discussion, whatever you want to call it. It's got what we call the big five in terms of market share of the CRM industry. I also like to call them AMOS. It's kind of nice. You can just let it roll off the tongue a little bit.
Let's see if anyone can figure out why you're calling it that.
We'll see.
So nothing to do with Rolling Stones, though.
No, or Kate Moss. But anyway,
right.
We're going to have, it's great. And we were able to get them to join us for about 75 minutes of a really, what we think is going to be a great industry conversation that maybe we haven't really had a chance to have a nice, relaxed conversation with 5 executives from the 5 market share leaders in the space. So this is great.
Yeah.
You want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's just incredible about this is these are the reason that these companies are the market leaders, right? And have the market share. These are five of the these are industry veterans. They are thought leaders, and we want to really get the benefit of the thought leadership that they provide, and the knowledge they have of the industry and just life in the history of this entire industry too. So these guys are arguably the best people we could possibly get to do this.
Absolutely. And we're going to just kind of break this up. You told us it's going to be about a 70-minute kind of conversation. We got some high level kind of themes that we're going to kind of, let the conversation flow underneath these different themes. So the first one we're going to tackle is kind of the current state. We've been in the pandemic for about 8 months in terms of sheltering in place, 7 or 8 months. So we want to kind of see what they're seeing and what they're hearing and really have a discussion around where we are currently in the midst of this pandemic. Then I know Paul is really interested in having this conversation around platforms and ecosystems and whatever, marketplaces or whatever. There's a lot going on, and it's not just an application anymore, as we all know. And then we're going to have a rapid round kind of thing. And we've got some kind of themes that we thought we would throw in there, but who knows? Something might organically come up, and we'll have at it. So that's kind of the high level format in terms of the actual roundtable. And then the show ain't over. After we're done with that, we've got our players in residence, El Nicole France. What do you call her again?
El Cid, savior of Spain in the 13th century.
So if you were around in the 13th century, you'll know all about El Cid. If you're not,
it's El Nicole.
It's El Nicole France. And of course, Ginger Conlon, our players in residence. They'll do special commentary right after the 70 minutes. And then it ain't over yet, because then it gets even crazier, or potentially crazier, or just, more talking, which is good, because these folks are some of the best names, some of the best analysts, some of the best thought leaders that are in the industry, and we wanted to have a conversation to hear their thoughts about what's going on too in the industry, some of the things that they may hear during this first 70 minutes. So we've got 3 different panels of these analysts that will come in, talk, rifle out, rifle some more in. It's going to be a lot of fun, folks. I think it's going to be great. And I think we've kind of got all the, I want to do one more thing. I'm going to go back up. And just so you can follow, we would love for you to use, if you want to use Playaz RT as a hashtag, or if you want to use AMOS, something that's kind of, we haven't seen anybody else using. We're going to try to track some of these conversations, right? The folks that are on LinkedIn, we can more easily see them kind of aggregate. I think we can also see the folks if you're watching on Facebook, and if you're on Periscope, we can see those aggregating in. But if you're just on Twitter, if you could use the hashtag AMOS or Playaz RT, that'll help us out, and we can try to follow along what's going on. So, PG, do you think we're all ready to introduce the panel? Do you have any final thoughts before we do that?
No, I'm ready to roll, man. These are great people. I honestly, genuinely, I'm not saying this because we're on the air and supposed to say these things, but I really, really am excited about this one because these 5 are just awesome people.
All right, so we're going to bring it on one at a time very quickly because there's a question. During our usual show, there is a question that I am legally obligated to ask each person that shows up. And this first guy, we're doing it in alphabetical order, and it just lucky for me. It's Bill Patterson, who is the EVP and GM of CRM applications for Salesforce. Bill, thank you for joining us, man. This is great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I cannot wait for your first question.
I think you already know it.
Yeah, and I actually already know it too. So, Bill, do you have a favorite football team?
We're talking American football, right? I just want to clarify. It's a global audience now.
That's
yeah.
Right.
The favorite football team is one that is the New England Patriots.
Yeah. So moving right along, it's been great having
you. So you realize,
wait, which color are you wearing, Brent? I can't see it. I'm getting older.
Yeah. it's my team that I've had for like the first 48 years of my life, but.
Let's just say, Bill, we're very happy to have you, and I'm sorry this will be your last appearance ever on the show.
I mean, I figure I might as well go out with a bang since it is the last one.
And as fate would have it, since we're going in alphabetical order, guess who's next? Buffalo Bob Stutz, who is in CX of SAP CX, and he's rocking. See, now this is what I'm excited about. He is rocking the best outfit that we could have asked him to wear. So thank you for rocking the outfit and not wearing any Buffalo Bill stuff since your team just beat my team about 2 weeks ago. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
And I thought you were going to actually say it was a pleasure to beat you. Always.
I'm being nice in my old age, okay?
You're very kind. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And nice to see you too. Now, this is somebody, I have no idea what his football affiliation is, but Rob Tarkoff is joining us. Rob, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, guys. Good to see you. Great to be here. Go Niners.
Okay. Well, by the way, just so you know, Rob is very influential with the Niners because he happens to be EVP and GM of Oracle CX.
Right. We get that out.
Well, listen, I'm a Giants fan, but we're so bad that you beating us didn't really bother me at all. Right. So, Rob.
And I'll just say, I'm a Rams fan.
Last Sunday was rough, but anyway.
Yeah.
It was all right with me, but, usually Rams and Niners fans, we really don't get along. But my hate for the Patriots is far surpassed the Niners. So we're good to see you here.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm your second worst, or whatever the expression would be. Good to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
Penultimate.
Okay, the penultimate. Okay, so next up,
second.
I have no idea if Alysa Taylor is has a football preference, but Alysa, She is the Corporate Vice President of Business Applications and Global Industry for Microsoft. Thank you for joining us. And do you have a favorite football team?
Well, I think I would be lynched if I didn't say the Seahawks, given where I currently reside. So I think, so I don't have to move and leave town. I'm going to go with the Seahawks. And last time I checked, I think we're doing okay. So I think that's a pretty good answer.
Your quarterback is mind-blowing sometimes, man. I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like him.
I'm starting to have second, thoughts about this whole panel because we got a Niners fan, a Seahawks fan, and a Bills fan, the guy that just beat me. Only thing that's really, and of course a Patriots fan. The only thing is missing is like a Cowboys fan who ruined my childhood in the 70s. So let me welcome, last but certainly not least, is Suresh Vittal. He is the VP of Experience Cloud Platforms and Products for Adobe. Thank you for joining us. And Suresh, do you have a favorite football team?
Hey, Brent.
That's where he lives,
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a longtime Boston guy, so I live and die by the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the Celtics.
Oh, my God.
And congratulations on being on your last show ever.
Yeah. Boy, we couldn't have picked a better panel of folks to join us. But no, in all seriousness, we're really excited to have you here and to talk about what's going on in the industry. And so I'm just going to ask each of you to take a minute or two, and maybe we'll go right down the line in terms of the alphabetical order just to make it a little easier because there's so many of us. As I said, as we started, that we're about 7 or 8 months into the pandemic. So many things have been happening. It's even changed from the very beginning to where we are now. So maybe each of you could take a minute or two to give your thoughts on where the industry is currently in the midst of this pandemic. So Bill, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, and hopefully my microphone's coming through okay. I think there's a little bit of feedback on the line. But yeah, thanks for the question, Brent. And, I have to tell you, it's my first pandemic I've ever lived through. I wasn't old enough for the Spanish, flu back then. So I'm still kind of getting, by every day and learning to cope differently, kind of as we kind of go through these periods of where the virus is at. Obviously, Salesforce has been quite active at this time, leaning in with our customers. And you asked really the state of the industry, state of the market. I think the state of the industry and market is where our customers are. Many companies today, have gone through different moments of responding to the crisis. Then they've gone through moments of trying to kind of reopen and refashion kind of a back to work movement. And now we're kind of dealing with, I would say, this moment of a new norm, and a new norm that doesn't look like the old norm, but a new norm in terms of harmonizing a world of work that is highly distributed, a world of work that is a little bit insulated from kind of the travel that we used to make and the face-to-face connections, relationships we used to drive. And a new normal that is really challenging us to really reinvent. And I think that's probably what gives me the most excitement, the most encouragement, and the most energy at this time to lean in with my customers to help them create the processes, the experiences, and the capabilities, that will power us into whatever that next moment becomes. And so I think, this state of the market is probably, none of us probably started our year forecasting we would be here in looking like this October. But I do think, those companies that are really leaning in, that are kind of engaging with their customers, that are being there for their customers, that are creating on behalf of their customers, I think that are not only those that are going to navigate through well, but really become the leaders, once we kind of get out of this this state of flux that we find ourselves in.
Hey, Bob,
So-
you're not. Oh, you want?
Yeah, one thing, Bill, can you just elaborate a little bit on when you said reinvention, what that actually means for
Yeah,
the next few months? Are critical.
so words like contactless experiences weren't like the norm for us, 7, 8 months ago. I had the luxury of actually both buying a car and selling a car in a pandemic, never meeting with a sales associate, never meeting with a service associate, never meeting with, kind of a fulfillment associate when I actually dropped off the car. This was a completely digital experience, kind of powered by, kind of touchless like interactions. And what used to be a very manual, very paper intensive, very people intensive, very time intensive process happen now in minutes, not, hours, not days, not weeks. And so I just think that's the kind of reinvention that we see. Even those businesses that are really the most physical are now becoming digital. I think that's just such an imperative that we continue to see across many industries, not just the used car industry.
I think, Bob, you're up next.
So what was the question again? I'm old enough. I've lived through a few pandemics in my years.
Just the state of the industry right now in the midst of a pandemic. What are you seeing?
Yeah. So, look, a little history about the CRM industry. The CRM industry has always survived through these types of things and flourished, actually. And the reason for that is because more so now than ever, customers need to connect with their customers and consumers. And so, the CRM industry, I think, always thrives in these bad times. It's a sad thing, but our business actually has survived and flourished no matter what the crisis was, whether it was financial crisis. It has always managed to survive and do really well. And I think, even more so now, companies actually are forced more or less to actually have to communicate with their consumers and customers much more and really having to make those things much more personalized than they ever had to before. And the consumer controls the conversation in this day and age. And companies, I think, have really had to scramble during this pandemic to figure out how they're going to talk to their consumers and customers and how they're going to stay engaged and connected during a time like this. To Bill's point, right? I mean, I bought a house, never saw a single person, during the pandemic, right? I'm glad Bill finally bought a new car, though. That's really good. So Bill, did you just by chance did you get a new minivan?
Bob, I miss you, man.
So Bob, from that standpoint, same question I asked Bill, what does get reinvented?
I think what gets reinvented is the way you do business. I think companies have had to rethink how they do business in this day and age, right? The way they used to do business. Look, even B2B companies, and I just give you a clear example. B2B companies who never thought about e-commerce in their life because everything was, you had the same sales guy who for 20 years called on the same customer in manufacturing, right? Nowadays, even those B2B hardcore manufacturing companies are moving to e-commerce because they're finding out that their business actually is flourishing when they opened up an e-commerce site at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, before we get to Rob, just for folks know, you guys are sitting in so many comments, and I love seeing it, but it's kind of hard for me to pick and choose which ones to pull up. So bear with me. I'll get in the groove. But in the meantime, Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, so let me give you a couple of facts that maybe put this pandemic in perspective. So in the first 4 weeks of the pandemic, work from home was up from like 400%. We saw a 1.3 billion trip a day travel industry over $1 trillion a year ago. That was nothing. We're all working from home now. And for the most part, given this panel, we're in comfortable homes and dealing with things like buying and selling cars. But honestly, for a lot of people, the situation is a lot worse. We've been really proud of some of our public customers, like the city of LA and the city of New York, who had to, in a matter of like 4 or 5 days, shift from working in contact centers to everybody working at home, or had to completely revolutionize the way they got relief funds to citizens. We just had an event on that, our Oracle Live conference, where we had the deputy chief staff of the city of LA talking about how they were able to do that, working together with a community of people in the industry that really wanted to help, and we were proud to be a part of that. I think it's devastating now for businesses. You're seeing the rate of businesses in key industries, the rate they're going out of business is enormous. And so what I like about this opportunity is we in the CX industry can move from being something that people think about on a long-term basis to most of the projects out there today. And we're seeing, like probably everybody else is, moving to online, moving to touchless delivery, trying to figure out diversity of distribution models, trying to figure out how you work in an environment where 200 people are at home, and you have to create things like combined offerings with keeping customers safe, keeping your employees dealing with health issues. It's a major challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity for this industry to move to the forefront of the whole digital transformation projects that are going on. We're now the most important part of this. It used to be, I'll do back office processes, I'll get payroll, I'll get the most important thing now is your customers. And
hey, Rob, I hate to interrupt you, but we're having a hard time hearing you. Can we maybe drop you for a second, maybe check your audio, and then we'll bring you back because we don't want to miss any of the things you're saying.
Can you guys hear me now? No.
It's a lot of feedback for some reason.
Okay, yeah, drop me and put me back in. Thanks.
Okay, we're good. All right, so I guess that means, Alysa, you're up next. Your thoughts?
I think I'll build on what my colleagues have talked about. This time right now is it's a pretty humbling time to watch customers, and I would say it's both humbling and inspiring because we've, in a very short period of time, like Bill talked about, it was an overnight phenomenon that customers had to radically shift how they did business, how they interacted with their customers. They had to move entire customer service environments to a remote environment, sales organization, remote. In a very short. I hope I'm not getting phenomenal. Customers had to radically shift.
Wow, that's a very big latency there. Try it again. Hopefully that was just a blip.
Okay, let's see. Is that better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, there we go. So as we think about what happened kind of at the time the crisis hit, it was this massive shift to remote sales and service. And then all of the, commerce was up, sort of in upheaval. Distribution systems, how you do curbside pickup, how you do contactless shopping. And so, this is the moment in time where our collective organizations get to step up and help customers in ways that we've never been able to do. And radically shift business models so that they can still service customers, they can still help in time of aid and need, and then also get mission critical supplies to them. So I think, being able to be side by side with customers doing that has been, like I said, very humbling and very inspiring. And you see things like Mercedes-Benz, we're on a car theme here, since Bill just got his new minivan. Mercedes-Benz, they took an augmented reality solution and coupled that with remote service and are now doing 100% contactless servicing of their vehicles. I mean, it's incredible to see, and they did that in months, not years. This isn't the sort of days of like 3-10-year implementations. Things are happening in weeks and in months. And then I think we're in this phase now where other parts of the world and the U.S. is lagging a little bit, but organizations are returning to work and they're figuring out how do they keep their employees safe? How do you do contact tracing? How do you attest and be able to do facilities management? And so it's an incredibly radical shift for how employers have to manage their physical locations and keep their employees safe. And so we're on this continuum of coming in the heart of the crisis, and then what does that new normal look like? And like I said, I think all of us collectively here, we play such an important role in helping organizations not only stay both evolve and stay functional, but then also how you keep people safe.
We're going to bring Rob back and see if Rob, are you, let's hear you.
Let's check. Is that better?
Way better.
Yeah, it looks way better. Way better.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's because StreamYard is not running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure.
Not on Teams either.
That out? Okay. In any event, I don't know what you heard of what I said, but it was a really great comment. So.
Go ahead and finish up.
Take it away. Yeah, just take it away. Continue on.
Well, I mean, I'm going to build on some of the themes that Alysa just was talking about here, which I thought was interesting. One of them is the speed. I gave a couple stats. Again, work from home went up over 400%. Travel industry grinding to a halt. A lot of our customers have been in discussions with us asking questions like, not only how do I launch an e-commerce site, but how do I do all the business model transformation? So that includes things like, I used to sell products. I think, Bob made the comment about you can, his salesperson actually could go physically visit your customers. It doesn't happen anymore. They won't let them in. So now it's, how do I go to a subscription model? I want to do a whole business model change and start thinking about lean consumption rather than actually buying products. How do I do that? And we're finding it's a lot more about complete transformations, not just the CX part, but like billing, ordering, financials, ERP. And so we're in these discussions now, which is where CX is leading a business transformation. And that is, I think that's a big opportunity for the industry because now we're mission critical. And that benefits everyone, especially the customers.
All right, Suresh, you've been waiting patiently, so we are glad to hear you round this part of the conversation out.
I think Bill, Bob, Alysa, Rob, they covered a lot of the great points. It kind of adding and building on that, I'd say it's now about customer experience with empathy and helping brands build direct one-to-one relationships with their customers. It used to be optional. It's not anymore. And being able to do this at scale and drive those interactions with compassion and empathy and allow your customers to have conversations with you. I think Rob summarized it well as well. I think customer experience is driving that transformation. It's been that way for us at Adobe. We've kind of looked at this as a very data-driven way of thinking about customer experience. And that's transformed every part of our business. And we see this with our customers.
Suresh, can you elaborate a tiny bit on on empathy? Because there's a lot of discussion about it, but there's a million understandings of it. So how do you actually see empathy? I mean, what's your perception of what that is in business in particular?
I think it's the base, getting the basic stuff right? It's not treating people as their buyers and users and a statistic, but as their people and humans, and kind of being there for them at that point in their need. And rather than letting the brand experience drive you, it's their experience driving the brand. And I think being able to do that right at scale is really hard. It's really hard for companies because systems haven't been built for that.
So now we move on to a different kind of question, and this one will tax you a bit. So look, I mean, for years, several years at least, there's been kind of at least from how many of us see it, me, Brent, the esteemed former analyst, Esteban Kolsky, all still a member of the Four Horsemen. His digital apocalypse. I mean, I'm sorry, his digital pestilence. That's the one that his job is. But,
Bob knows all about that, right?
Right. So we've actually been very strong advocates of companies, especially in tech industry, shifting toward ecosystems and platforms as the foundation for how they actually literally not only run their business, but how they present to customers, what they provide to customers, how they think about customers, and what they're capable of doing down the road. Interestingly enough, if I look at each of your companies, you all, one way or the other, and kind of differently in each case, subscribe to that. And in different ways at different levels, but you all subscribe to that. But what's interesting to me, I'd like to hear, it's sort of a two-part question. Part one is your thinking specifically on what ecosystems and platforms are, how you actually view it. And then secondly, what areas of, especially when we're talking about ecosystems relative to platforms, what areas of technology, for example, as a representative of your organization, think that you should build, that you should buy, that you should ignore, even if if it's within the purview of a customer ecosystem, because you can't, no company in the world. I'm curious as to first your take on ecosystems and platforms, and then what you think build, buy, partner, or just ignore. And again, make it as particular as you need to your own ecosystems and platforms of the company. So Bill, why don't we start with
Yeah. I think when I think about ecosystem, I'm really thinking about the next economy. And I think about the next economic opportunity that comes as a result of what the ecosystem creates. I think of ecosystems largely as a big creation moment, an innovation moment that kind of moves a mountain. And I'm really excited about what we're doing around this notion of the ecosystem here at Salesforce. Fundamentally, it's defined kind of in three ways. One, it's about people. I think people, in many parts of other ecosystems, you can think about that as certain skills or traits or abilities. But I think really in the case of, people, it's about giving opportunity to create value. And I think some of that is, created value as a developer. Some of that's created value as a consultant. Some of that's created value as an analyst. But I think it's also really about creating value, for, kind of the benefit of producing amazing things. I think that this also kind of turns into great products. And I think the products that you create out of the platforms themselves, become durable units of value for companies to kind of glom onto. And I'm fascinated by, kind of the ecosystems of our time, like the, Apple App Store, and the economies that created, as a result of that. I'm fascinated by creating, things like the Salesforce App Exchange and the thousands of partners that are creating businesses, public companies going live, building products in that App Store kind of experience. And finally, I do think it is the platform itself. And I think the platform is really about helping manifest great outcomes for solutions to be created, businesses to power their transformations with, and them to solve problems of tomorrow on top of those capabilities. So I think, in terms of, kind of the ecosystem topic, you're right. I mean, that is going to be the future of our category, our industry, and where things go. But it's really made up of great people, great, kind of products and experiences, and then great platforms of technology that facilitate and enable that. That's the first part of your question. The second part of your question, you have to, do you want me to pause or have everyone answer first, or you want me to go to the second?
No, go do both. Go right ahead.
Yeah. I think related to kind of the second part of the question around technology and what technologies you need to own and whatever. I think specifically, the AI is probably one of the biggest transformational opportunities that we have. And yet what we're learning is that, absent human condition, AI can become incredibly biased. It can actually produce, kind of bad results. And it actually can produce kind of a misperception that, with machine learning, we can actually turn predictions into kind of great, kind of signals. And actually, for many organizations, they're still learning. We're in the early innings of this game. AI as a capability, as a technology, as a harmonization between people and partnership with computer and next generation computing. I think is going to be really important that we as technology leaders and innovators in all of our fields really keep close, to the chest. And I think that. For every great, algorithm that's out there, there's a human that obviously is consuming or plugging data into it. We have to make sure that we're not going too far afield from the human condition on the other side. So I think these are things that are hard to acquire and hard to take in, rather than you need to kind of hone in and tune them so that you're really making sure that you're engineering out biases or unintended biases, in these models. So I think that's something that, certainly needs to be a little bit more close to the vest.
Thank you, sir. Bob?
So I think what Bill said around ecosystems, I wouldn't just want to repeat it, but, I think ecosystems, are so important in this industry, right? And it's not just about creating the next economy, but it's, it's also about, if you think about it, right, it creates jobs, it creates, a whole sort of, new way for people, and also it creates new ways for people to get into tech who may not have come from, a really solid tech background, may have come from other industries or have been laid off, right? I think the new platforms that are coming out really allow people who weren't techies to be able to become, have good paying jobs in the tech industry. No company in this day and age can build it all themselves. That's why the ecosystem is so critical, right? And I think, going forward, the combination of, you have to have a platform because the whole industry is moving towards platforms. And secondly is the platform needs to be able to support multiple, ecosystems at the end of the day. And it's pretty simple, right? This industry has always been built on ecosystems. There were platforms, but not as extensive as there are today. From a technology standpoint, I think that's a really hard one because I think you have to break it into different pieces, and if you think about the cloud and where the cloud is today, I mean, look, if you're a software company, do you really want to try to build your own cloud environment at the end of the day, right? When companies like Microsoft and AWS and Google and also Oracle have built cloud platforms that are extensive, that, why would I want to go and try to replicate that at the end of the day, right? But, other types of technologies I think are important, right? I think, machine learning, and to Bill's point, right? Look, there's a lot of, I think with machine learning, as much as there is all this hype around it, the reality is in applications, there isn't a whole lot of it being used today. And even in companies, you look around, it's still in its infant stage. But I do believe that's a technology that is critical going forward, because it is the value that really, I think at the end of the day, a lot of technology, especially around building applications and things, is really commodity at the end of the day, right? So where's the value really at? The value is really in things like machine learning, where you can really help customers derive great value and really help them to be successful as companies.
Okay, thank you, sir. Hey, okay, Rob.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. You're good.
Yeah. So first of all, an ecosystem, I think a lot of people would have to agree, maybe the single largest ecosystem that's out there is people who built on the Oracle database. And I mean, this happened way before I was at Oracle, but obviously Larry's had that front and center in his mind about how technology evolved. If you build a standard, an application, a platform that's good enough, people will want to build all around it. And obviously Salesforce has had a lot of success with that, with App Exchange. And I think there's a lot of good models out there. I think the most important thing about ecosystem is, do you enable customers to take advantage of it in simple ways? Do you reduce the overhead for them in participating in the ecosystem and buying from the ecosystem and deploying the ecosystem? And so I try to think about it from a perspective of simplicity. Ecosystems are great for those who are inside them, but for the people who have to consume them, you want to make sure it's a simple process. The second part of that question, I think, was around platform. And I tend to think about platforms as in two ways. One is that it's fundamental that you make a platform, again, really easy to use, really easy to consume, and long-term sustainable for your customers. That's why I think Oracle went into the cloud infrastructure space. It's why we built all our applications on one platform. We want to take complexity out of the equation and engineer oftentimes human error, human bias, other things out of the process. And I think that's a key piece. The last question you asked is around buy, build, partner, I think. My philosophy.
Yeah, which piece, what would be the actual things that you already have you're good with? What are the things you have no intention of ever doing because nobody can do them all? And what are the things that you probably need to partner or buy?
I think a lot of it comes down, in my opinion, to what's your core competency. Oracle is an engineering company. We build great products. We take on complex engineering problems. And so we will often ask ourselves, which I think what was behind the Gen 2 cloud infrastructure that was built, is can we do it better? Can we build something better than what's currently out there in the market? And my view is, unless you have that confidence to do it better than other people, you should partner. You should partner around that. You should find relationships that can augment that. You should find connections with people who are best at what they do. And so I agree with the comment that Bob said, that a lot of things that are built up are commodities and not really kind of moving the whole industry forward. So that's a hard question I think we all ask ourselves and our teams is, are we going to do something that's really different and really better and going to move the industry forward? And if it isn't, we shouldn't do it.
All right. Alysa?
Excellent. All right. So ecosystems. I mean, I think you're going to hear the same from all of us. The importance of ecosystems, there's no question about that. And I agree with what my colleagues have said, which is the innovation we see comes from the ecosystem. And so for us, it's about, and I really love what Rob talked about, which is like, how do you enable the ecosystem? Because it is, once you can have a set of technology, but then how do you make it easy to consume? How do you make it easy to then go to market? And how do you really support that broader ecosystem at scale? And I think that's incredibly important. And for us, that bridges into platform, the way that we think about platform is in kind of two components. How do we build the best-in-class horizontal solutions across sales, service, marketing, operations, finance, commerce, supply chain? And then how do you have a set of tooling that allows for every organization to meet their unique needs? So how do you build that very specific app that integrates with your sales or marketing solution that's tailored for your organization? And one of the things that we've really invested heavily in is this notion of being able to give tools to those that are closest to the problem. So when you think about a platform, it's not just about the role of central IT, but it's about every person being able to innovate and actually use the platform to build solutions that help them day to day and help them solve the problems that they wrestle with all the time. And so that's how we think about platform. We think about the best horizontal solutions, and then we think about a set of capabilities that empower users to do things like build apps, to be able to automate business processes, to be able to analyze data, to build unique solutions like different virtual agents and things like that. So that's how we think about platform. And then, as to your question on sort of build, buy, partner, I think very much like what Rob said, Microsoft is an engineering company. We have the luxury of having an incredible global hyperscale cloud that we have built Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform on. And I think that's, we are very fortunate in that regard to be able, that platform, building on Azure allows us to have inherent out-of-the-box machine learning AI capabilities. But we also get to bridge into the productivity side. And so how do you take all of the, sort of the application as well as those unique experiences and put them in the hands of, everyone through a modern UI like Teams. And so really having all of that work in concert is something that I've actually been very proud to be. I've been at Microsoft for 16 years, and to see our engineering teams work side by side so that there's not seams between infrastructure, application, and the productivity layer, and really looking at it from the Microsoft Cloud layer. And so we're very much in a build it together type mentality. And then we partner, when we talk back to ecosystems, the industry layer and the micro vertical layer is where we partner very closely, because there are so many elements and so much innovation that comes in that vertical layer. And so, where do we partner to make sure that we've got, our platform is then being bridged into the vertical and micro vertical space.
Thank you. Thank you. Suresh?
Yeah, again, I'll just build on what my colleague said here. I think this notion of ecosystems is something that customers operate in highly heterogeneous environments. So ecosystem is not a choice, right? You have to work in an ecosystem. And frankly, cloud fundamentally changes the conversation we can have with the ecosystem and with the customers. And being able to do that in a highly flexible way, I think is really going to define the platforms of the future. I think there's a real difference between legacy platforms and all the legacy code that's out there and modern platforms that run in the cloud. And being able to do that requires you to think not just about the workloads that are going to be driven by your business, but for the workloads that are going to be driven broadly by the ecosystem. For us, it's equally about data to organize and think about the consumer more intuitively, but also the content that you build on to deliver those experiences. So I don't think a platform and ecosystem is really a choice. I think cloud makes both of these eminently possible.
Okay, so let me ask a little bit of an elaboration on that. Because I know several years ago at an Adobe, it was actually at the time still the Marketing Cloud Summit, but Digital Marketing Summit. There was a comment made about creating what you called an open ecosystem, which meant that if you found partners who did something better than you actually did yourself, then you would partner with them, right? And it's fascinating to see the evolution. So you see the partnerships like, the one you guys sit next to each other here have, the Adobe Microsoft partnership, which, as a lot of people know, I call GARP, which stands for Get a Room Partnership, right? Well, it's just, I've never seen a closer partnership, honestly. But the thing is that the other thing that you guys did, and this is what I'd like to elaborate a little on, is because you have sort of a unique position with the Creative Cloud and Document Cloud, as well as Experience Cloud, is creating a platform effectively from that. Then that was how it was posed. So how do you look at platform from that perspective? Because, we're effectively like where Microsoft, say, bleeds into productivity, you're bleeding into creativity, so to speak. And how does that work with Adobe on a platform side? Because it was a unique approach.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for picking on me. It's been an amazing partnership with Microsoft. We kind of realized early that we kind of share some of the core engineering ethos as two companies, and Alysa will attest to this. Our teams are joined at the hip on many of these initiatives. So much of our applications run on Azure Cloud. And when you brought up the point about the Document Cloud and Creative Cloud, I think too long have platforms been just about data, right, and about the API. And I think being able to tell a story and being able to give rise to innovation is equally about the art of creating and manifesting that content more broadly. Alysa talked about being able to connect productivity with the cloud infrastructure as well, and we think about it equally as connecting the storytelling and the content creation with the cloud infrastructure, and giving our customers a chance to reinvent themselves and reinvent how they deliver these experiences.
Well, thank you, sir.
I had one for the group. Actually, it comes from Bob, because we actually just talked to Bob last week. Though it seems like it was so long ago, but it was just last week. And we asked Bob, what should we ask him and his group of great executive panelists when we get them all together? So, Bob, what did you say?
I told you I don't remember. I'm getting old.
That's right.
I'm just a simple country boy. I can't remember things from day to day.
I empathize with you. I do. I do.
Yeah. All right. Well, so much for that one. What should we be asking you guys? What are your customers? What is one of the biggest things that your customers ask you that's been the hardest thing to respond to? And why has it been so hard? And I'll let anybody jump in there and take it. Okay. No takers?
I'll take one.
Okay. All right.
I'm seeing a lot of customers ask questions about how to think about full company transformation much more broadly than any of the vendors are presenting it to them now. And what I mean by that is, we oftentimes, at least our sales teams oftentimes show up with a variety of products and talk about product transactions. Buy this, buy that, do this. But there's not as much leadership, I think, from our perspective on what you need to do to transform your business, particularly now in the pandemic. So for many years in enterprise software, we've sort of kind of role played that the system integrator, the global system integrator, the management consulting firms, they sort of have that level of conversation. And then we come in when it's about product. And I think that's changing, certainly in the conversations that I'm having now, and I'm sure all my fellow panelists. It's technology is sort of like the last thing that we talk about. It's a lot more about a strategic point of view about where the market's going and how to adapt their business. And I just want to pick up on a point that Alysa raised about platforms from a vertical perspective. I think a lot of that's coming down to really understanding industry-specific transformation strategies. So one of the things that, and I know other of my fellow panelists have versions of this, but Oracle has a deep global business unit expertise around industries, telco, financial services. And I think those customers want to know, like, can you really help us transform industry by industry with a lot of thought leadership? And I think that's always been, we've always said that, yeah, you got to be industry, whatever. But, when you go like below one level, the rep still shows up with the 3 or 4 products they have. And I think it's really important that we shift our dialogue, our expertise, or the way we think about the industry as a lot more about full company transformation by industry. That would be certainly something I'm seeing.
Rob, I would agree with that. I think the hardest question, and I'll go probably to the hardest question that was framed to me during this pandemic was, how do we save our business? And it kind of borders a little bit on what you were just saying, Rob, related to becoming more aligned to helping customers realize the outcomes that they set forth. But in this particular case, it was really about how to help a company, make a decision whether or not they could pay their employees still, had to furlough their employees, or even, kind of shut down operations altogether. And I think those are the hardest moments because, I think all of us as leaders in this field feel acutely accountable, not just with the products that we offer, but also helping companies get to the places that they really wanted to go, sometimes saving their businesses where required. But I definitely think that's where we do, kind of need to go beyond just features and functions and capabilities and bits and bytes, and really lean in, with asking clear questions and asking clear trade-off decisions and guiding companies and organizations through these moments that were unplanned for and unpredictable and uncertain, for where things go. And sometimes that means, asking the hardest question, which is, can we, continue to do what we've been doing? I think those are the ones that are the most humbling. I think those are the ones that are the most lasting, and they will be with me for a long time. And those are the ones that, as a leader in our field, that we internalize and make now part of our new kind of fabric for our future, because we don't want to see that continue. And I think that ultimately it's what I love about being on this field, this panel as well. All great people that want to do the right things for people. And I think that's something that in this time, helping companies get to those hard decisions and even saying with truth, this is not going to work, and we're going to have to find a path that maybe you don't want to go down, has been really a test of leadership and a true test of trust that we establish with companies.
Yeah, and I'll just build on Bill's comment. Just before joining the panel, I was with a fashion brand talking to their CMO and CIO, and they've been in business for 80 years now, and they work with the same core group of suppliers, right? And their commentary to me was, look, we love your vision, we love where this is going, we want to embrace it, we want to become a digital first company, We used to sell through these fashion houses. We want to build a one-to-one relationship with our customer. But our conversation right now is about how do we keep the lights on and how do we pay the bills and how do we pay our employees? What are you going to do to help us in this? They told me when we speak with a supplier and our supplier runs into problems, we know the supplier we work with for 50 years. And so we work with them through the problem. And we build this enduring partnership. What are you, Adobe, going to do to build this enduring partnership? So that kind of a conversation is humbling, but it also starts to make you think about what are we doing as technology companies to help these customers. So with this particular client, I was able to come up with a plan and really help them drive adoption and think about their customers differently. And it wasn't really about our software; it was more about their business outcomes. So I thought I would share that story. I think that resonates what Bill said. It's really about helping our customers drive the right outcome for their business. And if our technology helps them on the journey, Rob talked about that full entire company transformation. That's what a lot of these people are attempting to do here.
One of the things that I love that, as we talk about customers and helping customers be resilient and weather the storm and transform quickly, all of us sitting here on this panel have that common goal. So Suresh, it's exactly what you said. Like we're doing, we compete in many areas and we partner in more than we compete. And I think we do it with the end customer in mind. And it sounds like we all had a similar morning. I had a customer call this morning and the theme that they had, it wasn't the hardest question, but it was something that they were wrestling with. And I hear this all the time, is connection. Because it's not only how do you connect sort of different departmental functions, but how do you connect geographies as well? And different systems, different platforms, it's actually now, it's not an annoyance, it's a hindrance for them being able to stay afloat and to be resilient and to adapt quickly. And so, I think one of the things that as an industry we can continue to do more and more of is, how do we collectively as technology vendors work hand in hand and be mindful of these are the things that customers, we need our customers to thrive and we need to be able to support them. And we've got to do that cross-boundary and cross-organization and help them connect internally, connect to their divisions, their departments, their geographies, so that they have a more holistic view of their end-to-end operations and they can serve customers better and they can be more efficient. And I think that's a role we as a team and as leaders in this industry can play.
Okay, fantastic.
I think everybody got in on that, and they were all great answers.
I didn't get a chance yet. I've been sitting here being very quiet.
Yeah,
Right.
I gave you the shot up front. You took a shot and it went clank.
Take it away, man.
I think the biggest question that I constantly get, and it's not directed towards, the current company I work for, but more around the industry, right, is when is the software industry going to change its pricing model? When are we, especially in this pandemic, the models that are out there today, companies struggle, right? Look, subscription models are hard. And constantly I get asked the question, when will this industry move to a pay-as-you-consume model, right? And it's a valid question at the end of the day, right? Why should, in this day and age, when you look at how things, are billed, like if I use a hyperscaler, I get billed, for what I consume, and it's pretty darn accurate down to the second usually, right? But if I use an SFA app, I'm getting charged a subscription, and depending on which company it is, it could be anywhere from $150 to $800 a month per user. And the question really is a valid one, right? When will the industry change? Because why should I have to pay a subscription model, a fee for something that I don't use every day, every minute of the day, right? Why can't I just pay for what I use at the end of the day? And I think in the pandemic, this has even become more critical because companies do struggle, right? Subscriptions are killing companies because they can't afford to keep paying the subscriptions. especially when their business is faltering, right? Why does the industry make me pay from the time I sign the contract? Why is it not that I'm paying from the time I go live, right? These are valid questions that I think the software industry really has to do some soul searching on, because it's true. Why should a company have to pay until they go? They shouldn't have to until they go live at the end of the day, right? It's been a big issue. And I think, like I've said this time and time again, the industry has to change, because sooner or later, if it doesn't, I think it will be forced to, and that probably won't be a good thing at the end of the day.
Bob, that's fascinating. That same customer call that I was talking about, where we were trying to figure out how to get their different geographies connected, they brought up the same thing. Usage comes up all the time of how do I pay for what I use. And you're right. And their feedback was that this industry hasn't changed in decades. And how
you're absolutely right, Alysa. If you think about it, right? I mean, perpetual license were the drug years ago. And we went from one drug to another, which was called subscription, which everybody thought was subscriptions were going to solve the problems with perpetual license, right? If you bought a subscription, you wouldn't have to pay for maintenance anymore. You wouldn't have to pay for having a support person support you so you could get decent support. The whole idea behind subscriptions when the cloud came along was that maintenance was built into that subscription price. But that didn't happen, right? So companies found out over the years how to add on more and more cost onto the subscription. So yeah, you buy the subscription, but guess what? You're still paying maintenance, because you have to buy premium support, or so the problem has not changed, right? We still, I think we're outdated in our pricing models and in the way the world works today. And that's one reason I really like, if you look at other industries that have moved to a pure consumption-based model, right? I mean, when cloud first started, consumption wasn't there either, right? You sort of had a fixed rate that you paid based on a lot of factors. But now you look at how hyperscalers today, I mean, the consumption-based billing is beautiful at the end of the day. And by the way, I can play with that to get the best to my advantage, right? To make it work for me for what I actually am able to pay at the end of the day, right? And I think the software industry just hasn't changed.
I think this industry has to go through evolution for sure. And to say it's one or the other, or binary, perpetual to subscription to consumption to whatever, I'm not sure it's found its, kind of rightful balance, because I have seen other scenarios where companies have consumed, and then the scale of their consumption becomes so overwhelming that they didn't predict. And so I do think that, as we get on this continuum of evolution, the next sets of traits to also think about are, where do we have shared outcome and shared benefit? I think there's some great innovation going on in areas like commerce markets, where it's a percent of uplift of revenue, where you see monetization occur. I think that in some cases, in some reimagination of sales, work, it's a kind of percent of outcome driven on uplift of the projects that are driven from here. So I think we're also, much like in the AI conversation, we're in early days for this evolution to occur. I think there are signs of where transformation needs to occur, but I also think it's not. I've not yet seen the definitive model of it needs to go from X to Y. I think we have a lot of things to learn as more companies need more from us from an outcome basis.
By the way, I wouldn't call it that the software industry has to adapt, because on the platform side, at Oracle, it is consumption based now. I think there's parts of the SFA market that have to evolve probably more. I mean, service, a lot of it is session based today, and ours and other models. You pay for what you use. You try to estimate your usage, and if you don't properly estimate it, you make adjustments during the term. I think the challenge is that in sales, the metric in SFA in particular, the metric that we've used has translated into a desire to push customers to buy more than they need, and that's wrong. And so I agree with that. We've got to build a tighter linkage between value paid and usage usage your actual usage, and models that get us closer to that will start with changing the behavior of sales to be incented to get people to use the product rather than to buy it forward.
Okay.
It's hard to believe, but we're down to like the last few minutes. This has just been a fabulous conversation, and we are very respectful of you guys' time, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. So we're going to make sure we get you out of here on time. But we would love to ask you each just a parting thought. You can make it short and sweet, but if you could each give us something, one last piece, one last nugget that you wanted to end this conversation on. So we're going to go with Suresh first because he's been getting that question last all time, Alysa. We're going to reverse order. So Suresh, why don't you take that one?
Brent, what was the question again? What one parting thought on the industry? What were you looking for?
One final thought on this, on the industry or this conversation, or whatever you want to leave us with.
I think I'd go back to that empathy point I made when we opened the dialogue. I think for our customers to show empathy to their customers, it means putting the customer at the heart of their business operation. So let me leave you with that, and that's the whole business transformation, and hopefully we have
Alysa, excuse me.
So I would say it's the rapid pace in which the world is operating in today. And so every industry is changing, and it's changing so fast and so rapidly. And so how do we, as an integral part of every industry, like how do we all collectively on this panel help organizations keep up? And I think that's our job and our role.
Rob.
So I can't resist tying this to an election year.
We almost made it through too.
Not with me. And this is not going to be political in one party or another, but big tech is under assault, and the world doesn't see us using our potential to change the world for good as much as we should be. And so all these conversations around what we can do to help save businesses, what we can do to help people reinvent themselves, help customers reinvent themselves, it's an obligation of all of our companies. And on this panel are, the best companies around that. There are some others who maybe don't think about the world that way, but we all do. And I think this is what is going to be a big part of the dialogue in the future is what can we do with the privileged position we have and the good fortune we have to be in businesses that can withstand this kind of economy? What can we do to make business and the world a better place?
Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rob makes a good point, right? Tech is under attack, but then again, I think tech brought it on itself at the end of the day, and I think, and some of that's driven by Wall Street as well. And I know someone in the comments made that point, but it's true, right? Wall Street drives tech to do things that really shouldn't be done, right? Like when a customer's struggling, going back in, at the end of the quarter and strong arguing them to buy more when they really don't need it at the end of the day because someone needs to make a number for the quarter, right? So the whole economy and the way tech is sort of connected to that economy really needs to change, right? I mean, look, I usually don't talk about politics, but I do think that, in order for things to really change, the economy has to change. The way people look at capitalism, and I agree with a lot of things that Mark Benioff says around, look, we really need to redefine what capitalism is at the end of the day, and I think tech in particular needs to drive that movement because tech has been the one industry that I think has flourished more than probably any other industry tech has made more millionaires than any other industry there is. And I think it behooves tech companies and to really work together to figure out how to change the system and how to do the right things for customers.
And last but certainly not least, the Patriots fan.
Look, first, I think my parting thought is one of gratitude. I want to thank you for having us be part of this panel. This is a unique forum. I get to see friends. I get to see mentors. I get to see competitors. But most importantly, I with that spirit of gratitude, I also get to see those that are leaning in to solve the problems of tomorrow. And I'm incredibly inspired by much of what I've heard today. And know that our industry is in great hands because of those that are here and the companies that we represent and all we're doing to help those that are in need. I also want to say kind of thanks and express gratitude to the companies that are acting with trying to keep their employees safe, trying to keep their customers kind of coming back, and trying to keep their businesses open, because at this time I think it is important for us to kind of focus on what matters and focus on how we need to ensure that we get through this societal kind of blip that we're in, but come back to some degree of normalcy for all of us, and whatever that new normalcy looks like. I hope we all can thrive. And my final point on gratitude is, though I am a Patriots fan, I do look forward to the next time I get to speak, Brent, with you and Paul on this great panel.
We'll see about that, but
he's such a good speaker and a politician, isn't he? He really got that last piece in there.
We were bookended by Patriots fans on this one, actually.
Hey, that's okay, because this was such a great conversation, and we really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to do this. And this is the first one, and I can't think of a better way to start it off with this kind of conversation. So we appreciate you. And Paul, do you have any party thoughts before we let them go on their way?
It's one they probably all know anyway, that I just literally love all of them. Right. And it's just as simple as that. I've known them all a long time, and I love them all.
Even you, Bill. Even you. All right. So we will just wish you a great rest of the week. We would love to have you back at some point, either on the regular show or even as a group, if we could pull this off again. I don't know. That was kind of tough to do, but we just appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Wow. Let them drop off, and then we're going to bring in. Bob thinks he's one of the co-hosts now, so he's just kind of.
He's going to be.
I thought you guys wanted me to be.
After retirement, man.
All right, now let's bring in our Playaz in residence, Ginger Conlon and Nicole France. Wow. Wow. This, first of all, this was great. This was so great. And I couldn't even attempt to do the comments. It was just, there was just too much going on in there.
I was busy taking notes and listening. So for once I wasn't tweeting or anything, because there was so much in that conversation to pick up on. I mean, it's a shame Ginger and I only have 10 minutes.
Well, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you guys start sharing what you wanted to talk about after all that?
Yeah, go for it.
All the stuff.
Oh, thanks, Ginger. It's interesting.
And then she went mute. Oh.
Who, me? No, never.
No, she keeps going in and out. Is there something going on?
Oh no, is it my audio? Is it working?
Okay.
All right.
I'm hearing it.
Okay. Brent might not be. For me, there are a couple of really big things.
I think there's latency. That's what I was seeing.
Okay. For me, it was interesting because there were a lot of thoughts that occurred to me that in the course of the conversation, several of our friends addressed, which I thought was really cool. It strikes me that kind of what we've gotten to, and we were headed there already, but I think the pandemic really accelerated it, is almost a paradox. Because on one hand, what companies are trying to do, and several folks talked about this. I think Rob in particular touched on it. This idea that companies are actually trying to do really big things that are not around specific processes or specific departments. They're really trying to change the way they run their businesses. So you have that on one hand, and on the other hand, this tremendous need for speed. I think what we're seeing is a much tighter focus on doing things in, more tightly or narrowly defined implementations that are a lot faster and that are much more iterative. So it's really interesting that we are simultaneously aiming really, really high with what we're trying to do as businesses in terms of the degree of change we're trying to drive, but in a very different way. Let's face it, That's a huge change from the big bang technology implementations of 20 years ago that really were the standard of the day. So that was one of the big things that came through for me.
Before you go on, Ginger, Donnie, we have a Playaz community, 2 of them, in fact. You're a member of both. All right, so go ahead. Sorry.
All right, so just quickly about the community, there's like a dozen people who are in the audience that I want to hug because I haven't seen them in so long. So consider, you know who you are. Consider yourself virtually hugged. It's great to see you all, even though it's just in chat. But going on with what Nicole was saying, it really stood out to me that the panelists before were talking about how digital transformation has been happening, but just the COVID basically foisted upon everyone that agility is table stakes. You've got to be moving so fast and iterating so quickly, with big and small innovations, no matter what size company you are working in. If you've got, for so many years, companies would talk about these big enterprise players and how long it would take them to make any kind of a change, because it's like turning, a tanker versus a speedboat. Well, now they've got to, use a bunch of speedboats attached to them to make that fast turn, because they don't have time to run at tanker speed anymore. And so that really caught my attention, in terms of transformation. And then one of the comments when everyone was talking about what customers were asking for, that was tough to help with them with, and the conversation around the need to help customers navigate. I feel like that's also not really new. Like, a lot of companies have a lot of technology players have a consulting division to help put the business strategy along with the technology. And Dr. Nat asked a question, does this mean that software companies need to be consultants too? And, they should be helping their customers succeed around their technology. And I think a lot of technology companies have customer success teams that do that, some probably better than others, just the same with every, industry. And then Thomas made a comment about, does this mean that compensation needs to change, being based on performance and results versus licenses? And I thought that was really interesting, because the challenge with that is, as much as some companies might want to do that, you can help, right? You can give the technology, you can advise on how to use it. That's really, you can't stand there and make them do it right. You can't, force them to actually implement a workable strategy, right? So there's only so much you can do. So that's a tough way to change your compensation. Maybe your consulting team has that to an extent. It's just, that would be great, but it would be really hard. And those are a couple of the things that stood out to me from the conversation.
It's interesting on that one, Ginger, because we faced that, years ago, looking at gain sharing contracts and outsourcing too. And part of the problem is that the people who have the best influence over the outcomes are often not the ones for whom those incentives are actually designed. So it becomes a really big challenge of aligning incentives with capabilities and outcomes. But I did really appreciate the whole question. And I had written in my notes before we really got into the meat of it in this conversation, really almost the morality of what's happening economically in the software industry versus everybody else at the moment. Because let's face it, business software is done very well in this, especially anything that's been focused on digital channels, commerce, anything that is about connecting to customers and ultimately driving revenue. And, software companies have benefited, undoubtedly. And so it was really interesting to me to hear the degree to which all of these executives recognize the challenges that their customers face. And I think, it's maybe not about performance, but certainly this consumption question is a very, very interesting one when it comes to pricing. And it is going to be, it's going to be as radical a revenue shift and valuation framework shift as what happened when SaaS software pricing first came in. And that was long and slow and incredibly painful. And several of the companies that were up on there represented went through that. So I can understand why they're not exactly jumping to go through that again. But I do think it's critical. The other thing for me that stood out was, this whole idea of platforms and ecosystems, and just to take it to the technology for a moment, what strikes me is that we talk about platform as if it's one thing, but it's actually many different things. There are technology platforms, there are conceptual platforms. And I think what we're really seeing here is the point in time where companies are trying to create a broad enough set of technology bases that they can innovate and move from there in the way that they run their businesses. And so you've got technology platforms. Data clearly is an essential part of that, right? And I think particularly data models, which facilitate anything else that you want to do, that is the big question of our time, I think, in a lot of ways around particularly all things customer facing. But then there's an added element, which is, what is the work platform, if you will, for individual workers doing certain kinds of jobs, right? The way a salesperson works is not the same way that a customer support agent works. Marketers are off doing completely different things, and not everybody in marketing is doing the same thing. So how do we think of the platform on which work gets done for different workers? And I think this is the challenge that all of these companies are trying to address, both independently and within their own ecosystems, and certainly with an eye to what happens across all of those different pieces of software that so many companies are using, right? No one's really wall-to-wall anything. So those were the big things for me.
So let me ask you one more piece to that, because to your point, Nicole, ecosystems are also different things, right? And what was interesting to me, and what I actually really enjoyed hearing, was even though it was more implied than explicit, they were mostly talking about customer ecosystems throughout, not partner ecosystems, not technology ecosystems, but they were talking about customer ecosystems. But from your standpoint, from both of you here, how do those technology ecosystems, those customer ecosystems impact those different platforms? Because ultimately you're building for those ecosystems. You're not building for, the platform unto itself. So how does that work?
You want me to take a stab at that, Ginger?
Either one. Take it away.
Go for it.
I think you've got really sort of this duality, right? Because on one hand, if you are a software vendor that is trying to design for a platform, you want to be the center of gravity that other things are coming to, that are building on what you have invested in and designed. But the other side of that is not every customer is going to have invested as broadly in what you've done as you might like them to, and they'll be working with other stuff alongside that. So while you might have this aim of increasing your strength of gravitational force, if you will, you've still got to be designing for the problem set, which is you ultimately have to play nicely with these other platforms as well. So there is definitely an integration issue, and I think things like APIs have made a big advance in making that a lot easier. It doesn't solve every problem, but I think for vendors, the software companies themselves really need to think about where they want to draw this line and the degree to which they can do both things at the same time. And it's not always easy.
Yeah. One of the points that I don't remember who made it earlier. I wrote it down somewhere. Anyway, was making Alysa and a couple of other people I think talked about how platforms need to be easy to use, right? That's just 101 anyway. But to your point, Nicole, like when you're building out these platforms, they need to not only fit into the ecosystem, but they need to be customer friendly to help customers take advantage of that ecosystem.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I guess we're kind of ready to go to that.
Yeah.
Can I make one final comment before you kick us off for the next round? I'm wearing my little
Take it away. You're playing resident.
Voting pin.
You've got keys to the kingdom.
Everybody, please vote.
You got keys to the kingdom.
You can take it up with Dennis and Marshall and the Jesus. They don't mind.
Excellent. But thank you guys. I think this was an outstanding conversation. And my comment in our backroom chat was, I really think this discussion has raised the bar for the whole industry, and I think that's to everyone's benefit.
Thanks for putting all that pressure on us for the next round.
Low expectations.
No, it's a testament to those 5 folks from those 5 vendors who.
Thanks for taking the pressure off us.
Yeah, who came in the spirit of like collegiality and camaraderie, and it was great. I was remarking to Paul that it actually felt like one of the CRM Playaz happy hours, where we try to throw a bomb out there and let everybody else talk. We just sit back and chill. Relax. And that's kind of what happened at the end. They were going with each other, which I thought was great, and I would love for that to. Wish we could have kept it going, but they had other commitments, so maybe we'll be able to get them back. But well, ladies, we're at that time where we got to bring in our first of our the folks that we have not seen in like 8 months, because we typically go to all these conferences and we kind of hang around in a pack of, I was going to say wolves, but we're not that bad. But we want to have puppies. Yeah, it's probably more like puppies.
Oh, so cute.
So let's start bringing on our first group. And ladies, you want to hang out in the green room for a little bit?
Well, we'll have some more cronuts.
Okay, all right. We're going to
rookies aren't stale.
We're going to put our first group of panelists in. So let's bring in Jesus Hoyos, Dennis Pombriant, and the madman, which is Marshall Lager. All right.
Nobody told me about cronuts.
What about brookies? Do you know what a brookie is?
No, this is the Wookiee. So Marshall just went like this. See?
All right. Hey guys, I mean, first of all, thanks for making time to join us. This is our first time going and doing this kind of thing, and we were just so happy to have you guys come on, because we want to know, kind of get your take on what you heard, and even also just your take on where we are today and where we should be going tomorrow. So I don't know who wants to jump in first, but whoever wants to jump in, it's safe. Jump in.
Dennis, you're muted.
Let me jump in first. First of all, I mean, I think it was amazing. I was trying to keep up with all the messages, and I was tweeting in Spanish and doing the translation and everything. And one of the key things that I think is missing, and they probably in your next show, Paul and Brent, we need to bring into to talk about it. We're talking about digital transformation. We're talking about ecosystem and platforms, and Nicole mentioned this about data models, but I never heard customer centric. I mean, all this stuff needs to be definitely customer centric. And when I mean customer centric, I'm not talking sales, service, and marketing. The whole end to end, partners, B2B, B2B, B2C, all together. And that's something that the more we try to pull all this ecosystem together, I don't see it. I see integrations. I see people talking about customer 360 or digital 360, but I don't see in the whole infrastructure how that means. And not only in terms of the ecosystem, or be truly partners to the community out there. And that's a challenge, and I think it was a topic, that balance that we need to have with Wall Street as well. So that's something that I would like to see in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If I could add to that, I mean, what we saw today was a huge chunk, but it's just a piece of the whole conversation. The thing we didn't talk about at all is the employee and employee engagement. And I've spent my COVID year surveying the marketplace. Actually surveying end users and how are they doing, and I've surveyed well over 1,000 people, and the answer I get back is that the technology on the market is really great. Most people aren't using it. One of my studies, I asked in order of importance, what tools are you using? CRM came in fourth. Email was ahead of it.
What? Right. Email? Really? Even in 2020? Oh my God.
Hey, CRM made the list.
We're on cable, right?
What was second and third, Dennis?
Pardon me?
What was second and third?
I don't remember. I got to look it up. I think one of the higher ones was the IVR.
Wow.
People have 8 screens open at the same time on average because their CPQ doesn't talk to their SFA. Forget what the vendors are doing. My point is that there's a lot of demand out there that's untapped, and we need to find a way to get people to understand that the digital disruption is happening, and regardless of what you've got right now, it's probably old and it needs to be replaced.
To that point, Dennis. I mean, one of the most commonly used technology in Latin America during COVID has been WhatsApp. I mean, people rely on WhatsApp. Period. And there is a rush to integrate WhatsApp to call centers, to CRM system, to back office, and that's part of being sort of customer centric from that point of view, because people are using WhatsApp as a replacement of CRM. To your point, Dennis.
Yeah, it throws back to one of the first.
I could give you more data. Most people have said that they've conducted business on their phones outside of business settings, including in the bathroom.
Not going to touch that one.
Literally. I did not want to
let
ask
it go. Let it go. I was just going to say that what you're saying there, not the bathroom part, before that, throws back to one of the first things Bob Stutz said in this session, was that CRM thrives in bad times. What gets reinvented? How we do business. That's what's happening right now. He's absolutely right. So WhatsApp is getting used. If that's how business is getting done, that's going to become part of CRM. If we need to have some kind of business terminal in the bathroom, that's going to become part of CRM. I mean, that's me being silly,
with
but
frosted glass interface.
Yes, please. Frosted glass and hand sanitizer.
But Marshall, part of that challenge or that transformation, is that the techs need to truly sit down, with Wall Street. One of if we look at the Soho model, that they are not on Wall Street, they're able to do many things, that the big five cannot do because of Wall Street. So, and that's something that they truly need to sit down and figure out the next step, because pricing, everything that they were talking about, that so as we progress with COVID and whatever comes on the next crisis, large enterprises, small businesses, not only in the United States but throughout the world, they won't be able to afford software as a service at the current prices.
Jesus, you're exactly right. I don't know if you're aware of the Business Roundtable and their pronouncement from summer of 2019, in which they said, previously we thought that the purpose of the corporation was to make profits for their shareholder. And in 2019, they revised that to say the purpose of the corporation is to look out for 4 basic stakeholders. One is the shareholder, but it's also the partner, the community they live in, and the employee. And I did some market research again on that topic and discovered that most C-level people in some very large companies as well have taken that message to heart and are actively doing something to reach out to the community. So I'm not saying they're doing what you think they need to do, but I would say their minds are open.
No, so if they can add the customer to that list, it would be very nice.
Well, I mean, also the
customers are part of it.
That's the idea. That old saw, which was happy employee, happy customer. Which it's an old saw for a reason, right? I mean, funny thing about those kind of expressions is there tends to be something true about them, and the engagement side with employees is becoming equally as important in a customer ecosystem, right? So to all your points, really, as far as things like CRM goes, CRM to me, and after all these years, it's It's not what I expected it to be, but it's become to me basically an operational core for business. That's what it is. It's not more than that though. It's an operation. It basically can run customer facing business operations, and it does a great job at it if it's used right, of course. But more to the bigger points that the panel were raising and that you guys were raising, we're in an era now where things like human touch and things like engagement of employees and things that we didn't really pay as much attention to when we were narrowly customer focused as opposed to what we all are now, which is more broadly customer focused, have become important, like very important. And COVID-19, look, I don't buy into that it's sparked massive amounts of digital transformation. I buy into that all it's done is spark a massive increase in use of digital tools. That's not the same thing. The cultural changes, the business model changes haven't happened, right? There's interest in them more so than there were, but that's not the same. To what I've been calling it is basically a sprint to the starting line, not to the sprint to the finish line, which is what you keep hearing.
Yeah, we're using stopgap methods. We're not actually changing how business is being done.
Right.
I think you're right. I think what it's done is it's spurred the vendors to do a lot of development, and we're in the season now where if we had trade shows, we'd be getting visuals of it. Instead, we're doing it online, and we're getting lots of companies telling us about what they've developed. So now we've got a situation where there's a great supply, and we need to ask, will the demand show up?
Yeah, and to your point, then, is that the CRM is number 4, number 5 in your survey. And I think it was mentioned in the panel. We need to go back to the basics. Make sure that we're doing the core things that we need to do to make sure that we have the happy customer, the empathy, the conversation, the hug. That needs to be in place from before we try to do digital transformation, because if we start to do digital transformation or customer centric and we don't have those basic things, and the vendors be able to help you develop those basic things, that you have clean data, that you have a good customer model, that you can grow as you progress in as a company. I mean, all those things that needs to be in place before you start doing digital transformation. Employee, customer, the whole ecosystem needs to be with the basic stuff.
You're right.
Ah,
definitely.
It's like a break. All of a sudden, it's just pause.
Yeah, Jesus nailed it. We can end the session now.
We're done. We've solved the problems in the world. They're over.
Hey,
Zeus, go outside and everything's okay.
Let me ask Jesus something. So, out of what you heard today from the panel, what outside of what you said about the customer, from a LATAM perspective, what was the most important thing you felt was maybe not a part of that conversation, or maybe de-emphasized? What was that?
Nothing.
So
for the LATAM perspectives, I mean, it's 2 different markets. I mean, we need to develop this conversation beyond, the 50 states and Europe. We need to talk about customer engagement and the market as a global process. Whatever they talk today, that might come down eventually in Latin America, I don't know, in 3 years, 5 years, because of the complexity that you have in Latin America. So, that needs to evolve. And when we think about ecosystems and platforms and everything, and we go vertical and low code, IoT and everything, we need to think about Latin America. We need to think about Africa. We need to think about, the other emerging markets. I mean, I hate that word, that term, emerging markets. We need to focus on as a whole industry, and that's something that is going to take time. But I think it needs to be, they need to think, worldwide.
Absolutely
yeah,
right.
I find that very often we refer to the Americas as a region of business. It can't be. It has to be at least 2 regions, because South and Central America is nothing like North America. Now, I know nothing about business south of Mexico. Nothing at all. And
even the term Americas, I mean, they forget that Mexico is part of North America.
Yeah,
and we can have another conversation on that, but that's part of the equation, even Spain, sometimes is something out there, so that's something that we need to, as the industry grows, they need to start looking at these territories and all the stuff that they're doing as a whole. If we're gonna then, based on what you're saying, that the capitalism has to change. I know Salesforce is doing that, and everything that they're doing is perfect goodwill, but it has to be at the global scale. No easy to do, but we need to start somehow.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, Brent.
It sounds like you were waiting for that question the way you answered it, which makes total sense to me. Well, I want to throw one thing out here because we didn't get a chance to ask these guys, the panelists, but I want to just, while we got a couple of minutes with you guys, what technology, and I know a lot of what we've been talking about is more,
I thought you were going to ask about football team.
Well, I already know Dennis, I already know Marshall, and I already know Jesus, so no surprises there.
The Red Sox.
Arsenal.
So what technology do you think in the next 4 or 5 years is going to be essential to all the things we just talked about? Will drive all the things we just talked about. Really?
Low code.
So platform-based low-code environments.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what the next crisis is going to be, but all these technologies, I was able to use some of those during COVID, and thank you that we had those technologies.
I think it's the GPU. I think we're just starting to see the impact of the GPU in machine learning, for example. And I think there are companies out there that are making announcements about making big investments in GPUs in their infrastructure, and for good reason. I think the more analytical we become, the more we need that.
Do you think the NVIDIA acquisition of ARM is going to be a game changer for that?
I do. I think NVIDIA has a license to print money.
Yeah.
In every which way too.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's like
Wonderful gaming cards. I've got a 2070 in my machine right now.
They're coming out with a card in a week or so. It's called the 3090, and the 3090 on the gaming side is an 8K powered card, meaning it can handle 8K graphics, which no one's even using yet. But it also tells you the power of what they can do when it comes to everything ranging from, say, video editing to actually crunching numbers, right, on the GPU side and visualization around that. And that's an 8K card that they're literally putting out as a consumer, high-priced consumer gaming card. So imagine, and they do build cards for number crunching and visualization, right? They build it, and so
high-end engineering applications as well.
Well, they're doing a smart thing. They're seeding the market to let entrepreneurs figure out the best use for the product.
Yeah, that will be the next wave for customer engagement.
Just think about all the video crunching and all the stuff we're pushing through these broadband networks. NVIDIA is actually going to be a big company from a kind of a customer experience perspective with some of the things that they're doing and the capabilities that they seem to be putting together with these acquisitions. So.
I think so.
Listen, Brent, Paul, my daughter went to a wedding to one of those video games, and they have everybody pick up characters and everything, and crouching the videos and real time and everything was part of the whole experience. I mean, that's the next wave.
Well, right. That's a subject of another discussion another day. That's a big one.
Yeah, and then speaking of another discussion, fellas, we got to let you go, but we appreciate you coming in and helping us out. This just adds to and I love the comments. Josh has been, sitting in the green room commenting, and I mean, all you guys are commenting. It's really great. Almost the back discussions are just as good as what you're seeing on camera. But we have to say goodbye. farewell.
Miss you guys. Miss you guys. Look forward to catching up.
Totally, man.
Thank you.
Ubiquitous public Wi-Fi.
All right.
All right, man. Bye.
All right. So we are rifling. Marshall, why are you still there? All right. All right. There. Wait a minute. Is it? Yeah, it is Mike Fawcett time. It is Kate Leggett time. And there is one more person. There he is.
Wait
a minute. Where did he go? Oh, whoa. There we go. There we are.
Waiting. That was cool.
Wait a minute. We got to, Kate.
Okay, and which one of these 5 people is the P under?
Oh, wow.
No, not PE.
How can you see what I'm not wearing?
I didn't even. God.
And on that note, we welcome in our second group of analysts, thought leaders, experts, whatever.
Extraordinaire.
Great folks.
Heard.
Paul, introduce our next panel.
All right, I'm start, of course, on everyone else's right. I'm trying to figure out which one. It'll still be my right. Kate Leggett, how many years have we known each other, Kate? Like 100?
A decade. More. Way more.
She is literally leading the CRM practice for Forrester and more, actually, now. It's expanded considerably because so has what customer means. Leading analyst, world-class human being, just wonderful. And Mike Fawcett, who, as we've established on many a happy hour, I've known since 1996, when he co-authored a book with me on PeopleSoft 7. Wow. It was an 890-page book. And Mike, of course, is now the Chief Research Officer at G2, formerly G2 Crowd. And also, prior to that, ran IDC's business unit. And prior to that, was Autodesk, head of Autodesk Professional Services. And I met him when he was, of course, at PeopleSoft, and a thought leader also. And, by the way, great photographer. And then Josh Greenbaum, who is a independent, such as I am, but he is a much smarter and wider and also wider range independent. He runs his own consulting firm, EA Consulting, and Josh is one of the most industry esteemed analysts and is one of the toughest as nails guys I know when it comes to asking questions that actually have meaning, as opposed to just trying to be tough. Right? He's an amazing guy.
Thank you. I want to just echo Nicole. I don't know if y'all can read this, but these are masks that say vote.
Oh, all right.
Right. I'm just going to end my plug there for democracy. Okay, sorry.
Activist supreme.
All right. So you guys, what did you catch, or do you want to comment on anything that you heard over the last hour plus?
Where do I begin? I'll just get this off my chest. 2 things. One is, I really think that this pandemic is the asteroid hitting the Earth the way one did in the Cretaceous, except the difference is that instead of killing off the megafauna, it's killing off the small, mammals and proto-mammals that are the evolutionary future. And I'm really deeply concerned about that. And I think the conversation about the bubble we're living in is really, really important. And I'll go to the very end, the coda of the conversation, and say that I really think the industry is struggling deeply on the road to empathy with the problems of privacy and security, and that's this commentary about the House panel and their report really touches CRM, touches everyone in the room here, because we need to worry about how do we actually provide what the promise of the technology is without screwing it up. And right now, I think we screwed it up, and we're seeing the impact of that all around.
Josh, I love those comments, because what I took away from the session is in terms of what CRM is tactically. So I heard that the future of CRM is vertical. It's not only a front office transformation, it's a full business transformation, like Rob Tarkoff said. But what I didn't hear enough was about empathy, about being able to talk about customers who have been at best disappointed or inconvenienced, at absolute worst devastated. They could have lost their livelihood. They could have had family members impacted. There's women that are homeschooling and trying to keep down jobs. And we hear that the pandemic is this mass exodus of women out of the workforce because of too many constraints. We didn't hear enough about the societal impacts on customers, and then how companies are impacted, how some companies are struggling to stay alive, and how CRM can play a role of just, it's got to be easier. It can't be this big bag of technology that takes a team of IT specialists to knit together. It's got to be not consumption-based. It's got to be outcome-based. And it's got to be like Lego blocks that are easy to buy and easy to assemble, and that can democratize the field for companies both big and small to be able to compete against one another. And that's one thing I didn't hear, was that empathy, the empathy for the consumer, the customer, and the companies that are really struggling to stay afloat.
So, Mike?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that we get a big sort of shine the light on what's going on in business. I think from our perspective, because we get really, we see things from a very different way from the coast or from our industry, I think. And what I realized, I think early was, and I always thought the idea of digital transformation was lagging quite a bit, but what we saw in those first few months was that, when you went from where we were to when change was the only choice you had, because you weren't trying to transform, you're trying to survive, that you had to look at your business differently, and you were just putting Band-Aids on things. I mean, phase one was kind of make the workforce work and talk to your customers. And I think a lot of companies in phase one learned that they were so siloed, they couldn't talk to their customers across their business in a coordinated way. And then how do we digitize the business? And we're still in that. I think that's phase two. But, phase three, and Paul, you said this earlier, it's digital transformation is not the technology. How do we sort all this crap out? I mean, how do you optimize the culture and the process and the system and integrate everything into a new digital business platform? And I think, we're gonna move to a new hybrid business model or business operations model, I guess, as we get through this. But we're in the midst of we don't know what that looks like yet, and we're trying to sort it out. And I think a lot of companies aren't going to make it and aren't going to sort it out. And so, the industry has to step in and really help, not just on here's some cool new technology, but how do we make all this stuff work together? How do you get the data all harmonized across everything? How do you get rid of the silos from the apps and the communication and all those things? In other words, how do we tie it all together so that you could have empathy for the customer, you could interact with them in a new and different way?
So let me ask you this. I mean, what do those models actually mean? I mean, what do they look like exactly? I mean, from your perspective, what would be the models that you want to see?
Well, I think we think about platforms and we define them in 27 different ways. We silo the way we think about it. And I think that's the wrong idea. I go back to this simple idea of all of these pieces are Lego blocks, and we're really building a business platform, not a technology platform. And so out of this, you've got to have a way for all the data to be tied together in a consistent way. You have to have all of your systems tied together in a consistent way. You have to have all your communication capabilities tied together. And then you've got to flip that and think about, okay, and now how do I make that so that the customer's choice, it's almost not even customer centricity anymore. It's enablement to the customer so that they can choose how they want to interact, choose how they want to communicate, choose how the business is going to work from their perspective, I think. But we've got a long way to go to dig through that one, I guess.
All right.
Can I jump in on the platform thing? That was another one that bugs the hell out of me. And I hate to use the term ecosystem, but fundamentally, the platform world is just an egocentric expression of one of my favorite aphorisms, which is that the big problem enterprise software vendors have is that they try to sell product the way they build it, not the way it's consumed. And this is a terrible model because everyone has a platform, and now I am working with customers who have how many platforms? 6, 8. So in other, there's no platform is literally that foundational thing that's supposed to hold everything up. But if there's 6 or 8 of them, you just got a mess. And so we're pushing this mess. And to Kate's point, and Mike, you said this too, this plug and play issue has to really, really, really work. And it has to work. It can only work when the vendors start, I just wrote about this, dealing with the reality of the extreme heterogeneity in their customer base. It is simply a crime to say that digital transformation is a great idea and here's how to do it. And by the way, everything in this diagram is logoed with my products. That's a dead end. Yes, Marshall, I'm talking about the ecosystem indeed.
All right.
I'll stop there.
I have well, Kate, if you want to come, and then I want to come back to something you just said.
No, I think both Michael and Josh say it perfectly. It's got to empower the business user to assemble the capabilities in a streamlined way, low-code way, to be able to enable the functions that you need to best support your customers. And right now we're dealing with these highly complex, dated, brittle ecosystems that don't serve either the user or the end customer.
All right, so this goes to kind of the point of extremely heterogeneous. The real question that comes to mind, because it's hard to disagree with that, and you see it phrased with a million different good and bad expressions. One bad one, which I hate, is hyper-personalization. Can't stand that term, right? But ultimately you're saying, all right, here's this. So let me give you an example. There's a company called MetaCX, Scott McCorkle's new venture, and his idea is this. And he's kind of built technology to enable this sort of thing. You start with a salesperson, because the business is going to sell what they sell, and they're going to talk to customers, and those customers actually say, well, here are the outcomes that I'm looking for. And the salesperson works with them to define the outcomes clearly. Then that's part one. Part two is the company then aligns with the outcomes of interest to those customers. So part two is actually enabling the ability of the company to do that. Part three is measuring success or failure of that effort. All right. So I love what he's thinking. He's having some questions on what to call it. He's calling it customer lifecycle management, which is, if you want to look at it, it is kind of that, but it's not that market at all, right? So it's not a good market for him to be in. But how do you even think about it this way? I'm an individual customer. You're going to your company and saying, okay, here are the outcomes that this customer is looking for, align. I'm another individual customer. You're going back to the same company and saying to the same people, align. Third, fourth, fifth, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. How the hell do you do it? I know how I think I do it, but this isn't my forum. I wrote 400 pages on how I think you do it. But I'm really curious.
Exactly. It's not a soundbite.
Right. No.
Well, that's right. That's
all right. I'm still asking you to tell me not the soundbite. You can go beyond the soundbite, though. Go beyond the soundbite.
It also depends on the different applications. You use a new sales engagement platform or a new SFA solution. What are the tactical measures of success? Is it shortening your sales cycle? Is it speeding your time to order? Is it making your sellers more productive? I think it has to be broken down in a lot more tactical measures of success that are dependent on the application and not necessarily how my customers are feeling at the end of the day.
Paul, I think I like the word individualization instead of personalization or hyper personalization, because I think that sort of makes you think about that customer in a different way. But every business, there's rails inside of that. Like there's only so many permutations of how I could deliver the thing that you're asking me to do. So every business has to know what that is, define what the business is, and the customer fits in there or the customer doesn't fit in there. I mean, individualization inside of what you do is fine, but individualization that makes you become a new business every time you interact with a customer is called failure.
All right. And Josh, what do you think on this one?
Well, we could go around the block on this 100 different ways. I am struck by the fact, and I was of course thinking about this as coming in this panel, that the very, very, very vast majority of customer experiences I have are identical, largely identical. They're not strategically differentiated at all, and they're identical around a least common denominator. You know, and in fact, I was just thinking, you know, the most remarkable change to my customer experience is Apple Pay, only because if I'm on the website and I want to buy something, I can, once I do it with Apple Pay, it populates the whole experience with my addresses, my whatever, and I'm done. That's pretty cool. That's something Apple did on the payment side, because payment sucks. But otherwise, I'm going all over the place looking for other experiences, particularly other than buying everything from Amazon, back to my, you know, Cretaceous era asteroid analogy, and I'm not finding a whole lot of differentiation, and I'm very underwhelmed. Honestly.
No, well, I think you're right. I mean, there's look, these are works in progress too. I mean, these are not, to me, these are insanely difficult problems to solve, right? Because the other side is, even as to me, look, if you find all the data you need, let's say on 100,000 people, you probably find that you could make 25 offerings that cover pretty much what 64,000 of them want, right? Because we don't, you know, the reason that something sells more than one is because more than one person wants it, right? So, right. So, you know, once you find that, it gives you some common basis for the person on the one hand to feel valued, and on the other hand, for the person to, you know, or the company to be able to operate within the constraints it has. So that's very positive. But the hard part is, even with that, every one of those 64,000 who do have that common things that they like still acts differently, right? They're still different human beings, right? It's not the same person. And any given day, none of them are going to act alike, even if they end up with the same conclusion. Let's put it this way, to give it a political bent. Many years ago, this is one that will take it out of the current situation. There used to be this very, very right-wing organization called the John Birch Society. And they always used to talk about the Republic. Now, let's put it this way. After my radical period, I talked about the Republic too, but my idea of Republic and their idea of Republic were two entirely different things. But the word Republic was used by both, right? So same deal, right? So we're not dealing with anything a whole lot different. So given that, so my question to you guys is this: do you make a compromise? Do you say, okay, well, we're not going to get everything, so we'll do the best we can and make it hopefully good enough? Or do you sit there and say, we're going to delight our customers all the time, so we have to like make the $100 million effort every minute? Or what? I mean, what do you do given constraints you actually have? How do you handle it, given that we're in this kind of evolutionary period where we don't really know how to do this great yet?
Sometimes delivering a customer just means valuing their time and getting in and out as quickly as possible.
Yay, thank you.
And it varies a lot by the business too. I mean, there's a bespoke level of something that I'm paying a lot for that I expect a lot different from the wine shop that I pull up to and they bring my wine out and toss it in the back of my car. Like, that's a good experience to me because the wine got from the shop to the back of my car. But that's certainly not what I expect in a different situation, right? So it depends.
Okay. Right, and I'll finish by this because I think we're about to get yanked by saying that, you know, there's so much to repair and modernize in that full customer experience. I think we started the show by saying CRM is everything at the end of the day. And I look at, you know, when I look at my favorite example of my local hardware store that's part of a network of warehouses run on AS400s, and when they can't, you know, they can't keep up. So we're talking about really changing all at so many different levels that you're never going to, you know, you got a lot of work to do before you're going to get that perfect end user experience, because you got so much in the background to actually have to fix as well.
All right, I think that is it. This has been great having you guys, do what you do. And actually, folks, if you have never been to an analyst event, this was basically what we do on the back channel. So,
drinks involved.
Right. That's right. We're all friends here. So, friends, we enjoyed having you here, and we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And we hope to see you guys like in real at some point in time in the not too distant future. But
I didn't even know that existed anymore, Brett.
Yeah. Just plan on being on CRM Playaz.
Just live in a little box. That's it.
Individually.
We'll call this home from now on. Let's do that.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Consider it home.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, guys.
And okay, there we are. All right, we're in the final stretch here, and I just got to say, I got to send a special shout out to Sven. Sven, look, here's the reason why I haven't been able to pop up some of these comments. They take up our whole face, man. You got to make them short and succinct. Cut them up into pieces.
But got to give Sven some credit.
Oh,
his
yes.
content to what he says here.
Oh, there's plenty of stuff. It's great stuff. And I read all the comments on the event page because after we're done recording, that's where everything will live. You'll be able to watch this over again. You'll be able to check out all the comments. Sven, there are great comments, but put part 1 and part 2 so we can put them up on the screen. And you can see our faces, although maybe that's why Sven is doing it. He doesn't. Really
that's right. He's smart. He's smarter. He's smart.
Okay.
Smart.
So last panel of the day. I mean, we're hitting the home stretch here.
Yep.
Feel good.
The last panel of the day, we do a little wrap up and then we say good night.
As long as we're not doing a wrap, just doing a little wrap.
Right.
All right. Rebecca Wetterman.
Yay.
The bad boy
John
of ERP,
Reed.
John Reed. And clone number 4, Ray Wong.
Where's we're missing someone. I'll take
that's right. Wait a minute. Yeah, not all the way from
there he is.
I don't know if he's still in Germany or is he over here or not, but Thomas Weaver.
Still in Germany, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
oh my God.
First of all,
man.
thanks for staying up, man. We really appreciate you doing this.
Plenty of light around here.
We appreciate all 4 of you being here to wrap this up with us. I don't know how much of the panel you did catch, but I'll just open it up. And if you did catch any, give us your first impressions. If you didn't, just tell us a little bit where you think we are right now, the state of the industry, 8 months into a pandemic. Whoever wants to jump in, let her rip. Everybody's so polite. Nobody wants to jump in.
Rebecca's on mute, yeah.
the guy with the whiteboard should start, I think.
Well, somebody start. I mean, is everybody
all right?
unmuted?
Okay, where are we? I would say the problem is no one has a playbook, and everyone's afraid to create a playbook, and I think that's really kind of where we are. From a customer perspective, everybody knows that they have to be contactless. They realize the digital channels are real. They understand that if they didn't have a brand before this, they're kind of screwed. And customers are running around trying to figure out, hey, how do we change this, right? What do we do, right? And they realize that all those wonderful reports that they thought they had, that they reviewed every 2 weeks, are useless, right? They're waking up now and they start the day thinking, oh my God, reports and analytics are really now important now, right? So that's the first thing. Like they actually care for the metrics. They start the day with the metrics instead of look at them 2 weeks later, right? They realize that if they didn't have a digital channel, they better build one really quick or before the business completely goes away, because customers are substituting brands. They don't care. It's what's available. They don't even care what your brand is. You want toilet paper? We don't care what brand toilet paper is. You want hair dye? No one cares what the brand of the hair dye is. They're just going. They're just buying whatever they can, and they're still in that. And then the third thing is like they're bored. There's so much free time. They don't know what to do. So if you can find a way to fill that free time, content is like crazy. Content is king at the moment because everyone's trying to figure out what to do with that content. So, but anyways, yeah, I'll start with that.
So I'm going to take a little bit.
Rebecca,
different.
are you unmuted? Okay, good.
Am I
No,
unmuted?
she's unmuted. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
So here's a little bit different spin, and this is what I took from listening to the conversation earlier on the panel today. Boy, what a level of commitment from all the vendors. And Ray, before you laugh at me, hold on. think back before cloud, where I sold a license and walked away. You know, there's the old joke, when you make a ham and cheese omelet, the chicken's involved and the pig's committed. You know, we've really moved from chickens to pigs with vendors today, where, yeah, there are higher switching costs. Yeah, there are higher switching costs, but, you know,
The visuals are horrible.
Folks that are really committed on an ongoing basis to at least being in there to touch on customer, not just survival, but resilience and innovation. And I think if there's one thing, you know, we can talk about the cloud model, and cloud prices are going up, and isn't that horrible? And switching costs are going up, and isn't that horrible? But we've got a level of commitment and skin in the game from vendors that was not true in the industry 10 years ago.
All right.
That's a good entry point for me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little low, but good.
All right. Well, I'll lean a little further in. First, I want to thank anyone who's still here. You are the true hardcore. I know anyone who listens here now is really giving a crap about this whole discussion, so that's great. Shout out to the diehards. After 2.5 hours, I expected to be grouchy. I'm not that grouchy, and I'm trying to figure out why. I'm only a little bit grouchy. I think it's because people are making fun of terms like hyper-personalization, so I don't have to. And also, I don't think I heard customer data platform mentioned more than once, maybe not. So,
I heard it.
What's a CDP again? Like, what's that?
Yeah.
It's so hard to define.
So that's good. And Rebecca's point, I think, is really valid, which is how great to hear these practitioners not engage in their typical competitor bashing and their typical how great their technology is, and talk about collective problems. But I do want to say that I'm not sure if the empathy thing goes far enough. I think we're at the point where we have to think about courageous action. And what does courageous action look like for a vendor? That's a very interesting question. So, for example, the travel and hospitality industry is in shambles right now. What do B2B vendors owe this industry in terms of what can they do? Can the people on this call today form new alliances to figure out how to help that industry with their problems in a creative way? So that's just one example of why I think courageous action just has to go further than it has to this point. And pricing is a whole other thing. And we talk about, oh, well, we can't change the pricing model because Wall Street's going to freak out with our revenue model. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to pump the tires of these two vendors, but there's two vendors I can think of right now that play in the CRM space, although not only in CRM, in the lower market, that have very innovative pricing models. And if you drag your heels on pricing too much, vendors like this are going to come up market and kick your ass. And then all your hesitation about Wall Street is going to go out the window because someone else with a better pricing model is going to come in and spank you. So I'm not sure that the vendors on the call today are moving fast enough on that, but I applaud them for bringing up that conversation and having it in a genuine way. And one more thing, and I'll shut up, which is this whole thing around expanding into the back office, great. And Dennis's point about employee, absolutely. But we have to go further here and talk about the tensions between speed, which was a big focus today, and protecting employee health and well-being. Just as one example, a ton of retailers, all these stories about they're not reporting their positive COVID tests amongst their employees. And if you had a delivery and the company said, hey, we're going to be a day later than Amazon, but we're going to make sure the delivery driver is COVID-free, is paid well, has full benefits, would you say, hey, I'll take that delivery if you give me transparency into how you keep my products clean and safe? Would I pay more for that? Would I support your business? That's a conversation that we need to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're going to come back to that.
Sorry.
No, Tom.
From my end, there have been actually 2 points that stood out. One was Bob actually saying there needs to be a change in the pricing models, which is long overdue. More or less his words. There has been a free translation of what he said, basically. And the other thing that I always wonder about is that there seems to be a differentiation between the thoughts of ecosystem and platform. And this is probably because platform is, well, we are software vendors, we are technologists. Platform is something technology. Yes. And ecosystem is something around this technology that uses this technology. So I try to look at it slightly different. There is a technology platform and an ecosystem, and let's say something that generates insight, not data or data models, insight plus collaboration and productivity, depending on where you are. So if you combine those four things, then you basically have all elements combined. We are talking about the people because an ecosystem is not only about customers, it's not only about the vendors, it's not only about partners, it's the people, including employees, including whoever is maybe just affected by this, what I then would call the platform. So the platform actually is all this. And these need to get connected because there will be more than just one at the end of the day. And right now we can count 4 that are strong. And then we have the ones with the other pricing model that John just did not name, but which are there.
I'm going to jump in and say, if you really want to disrupt the software vendors today, what you would do is give the software away for free. Transactional software is useless. If any of these vendors are selling me software in 5 years, they've completely effed up. Yeah. I mean, because you're brokering next best action decisions and you're making recommendations. I'll buy those from you. And so if I wanted to take out any of these CRM vendors right now, I'd give the software for free. Everybody would transact on it. I have the hugest volume on transactional data. I'd mine the crap out of that data and broker it. And then they have demand signals, supply signals, and pricing optimization built into those networks. Those multi-sided networks are going to kill every single transactional vendor in the long run. And companies like Amazon already have their own. Google has their own. And Microsoft's going to build their own. So the question is, can we help other customers that are not big tech companies be able to succeed? Right. And that's going to happen in all areas of CX. So I think that's what they should be preparing for, is those multi-sided networks, hundreds of millions of active users at the same time, and then giving away transactional software for free.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ray's pricing on the wrong level, right? It's not the question of the pricing of the application itself, because consumption-based pricing assumes a commodity, right? We're not there yet in CX if we look at that next best actions and the other things that Ray's talking about, right? So yeah, we can look at consumption-based pricing for the commodity pieces. Okay, but that price then goes to zero, right? Then we're looking at what are those value pieces that are still differentiated, that are really the way the revenue model goes moving forward.
Yeah, even in a paper.
But they're public companies, right? So they still have to get their revenue streams. I totally understand that part. But the point is they have to prepare for a day when you're not selling transactional software.
No, and the point is it's the exchange of value. Even if in a consumption-based model, I pay for, well, not for value, right? The value I might reap a little later. And I agree to, well, I had a discussion with Esteban in between. You probably have read it. I agree that us consultants are in the mix as well. I can screw up the implementation. Yes, I can do. Yes, but same to the software vendors, I need to take accountability for that. With the customer too, if they do not listen to advice that sometimes is right and sometimes not so, but if it's right and it's going the wrong way, then there's a discussion then again how to fix it. But the price must be about value. And the value is derived by the customer over time and not at the time of usage. And that's it's hard to achieve.
So let me ask you guys this then. Does consumption-based pricing become an evolution to the new model or a diversion from the new model, or is ultimately irrelevant to it one way or the other and just will be bypassed? Whoa, somebody's got a speaker on.
Well, people are saying that we're buffering right now. We probably blew up the StreamYards.
Blew up the internet.
So,
I think we're okay now.
LinkedIn is buffering. Yeah, so I see a picture there. I have LinkedIn on in parallel. So
yeah, LinkedIn's buffering as well. Yeah.
From the pricing model, I'd say it's a deviation. Actually, put it positively, it's a deviation, Paul. If you want to be a cynic, then you say it's an attempt to move thoughts away from what is right. I'm sometimes not cynical enough, but That's
Well,
something you could think.
Well, I would simply say that no one can predict the future here, but that the trend is away from vendor lock-in and towards customer choice. And what that means is exactly what Ray's talking about in terms of provide the value that the customer needs, and provide the flexibility. And one thing that I do like hearing about is integrating a little more between these vendors, something Joshua alluded to earlier. Very few of these customers are aligning with one vendor anymore. So you have to have the largesse to show how you can play nice with your competitors. And I think it's having that flexibility, and then customers will decide who's really making a difference to my business. And that's where this industry conversation becomes so important, because if you don't understand the struggles of an industry, like you can't go into an airline right now and compare them with what McDonald's is up against as far as, transformation. It's totally different. If you can't go in and say, hey, your airline's behind this other airline, and here's why, and here's how we can get you up with whatever this other airline is, that's the expertise that's required now.
All right. Actually, Brent, can you bring up John Matthews' question for a minute? The defined value one?
I think it was a comment.
That one. That one.
Yeah.
So what do you got? Answer that one. You guys just answer that one.
Bottom line or top line, right? It's reduction in cost or increase in revenues. We get too far into measuring metrics that don't matter. It's got to be those numbers that I see either hit the top line or the bottom line of the balance sheet.
So net promoter score, brand equity uplift, are what? Meaningless?
Not if
don't mean it.
Promoter score, totally meaningless. Totally meaningless.
Yeah, I'm right there.
Stop
with
measuring
you.
NPS, people. It's like a lagging indicator. It's like the
we can start a movement on that one, man. Start a movement.
I'm anti-NPS.
It's like measuring Yelp ratings.
Wow. Does anybody still do that? Wow.
I know I have two cousins that can help you with your Yelp ratings. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, and I just wanted to say, I just wanted to say I'm not a techno optimist really, but the one thing I do like about this modern technology is, like Rebecca said around value, to me it's all about the potential to measure that more frequently, and that includes the ability to measure the success of projects. So instead of waiting a year to see how your CRM product is going, can you measure it on a weekly basis? Can you tell where you're going wrong and identify that? There's so many project failures and underperforming projects out there still in this space. Not a topic we got into today. Josh Greenbaum probably wishes he brought it up in the last segment.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, the best use of these so-called intelligent tools, which, let's be honest, are not very intelligent yet, are the ability to come up for air more often and make course corrections. And that to me is how you get to better value versus the yearly review of how did our project go? How did we go awry 6 months ago?
All right. Thomas, Ray, you want to speak to that? Either of you guys want to speak to that? Tom, Ray?
Go for it, Thomas. Go for it, Thomas. I'll join after you.
Sort of reiterate Rebecca. So the ultimately for a business, it turns down to top or bottom line, ultimately. So in that sense, Ray is of course right. But on the other hand, those KPIs are ways to measure a way to more of the one or less of the other, right? So we work via different objectives to some overarching one as a business. And there, I'd say Ray becomes wrong because, well, the NPS might be the vehicle to get there.
I'll jump in and say this. Look, we have metrics that are vanity metrics, right? There's a lot of vanity metrics, like number of views. Woohoo! Like, who cares, right? Total impressions. Like, who cares, right? Until you assign an action or financial or value exchange metric, value exchange to the metric, it's worthless, right? So number of views, okay. Number of views forwarded, yes, right? Number of views relating to total consumption or total, dollar value, excellent, right? NPS, Net Promoter Score, like NPS plus something is interesting. NPS by itself, I don't know. Someone made a shitload of money. Congratulations.
You need to tie it to something financial. I think that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, no, I mean,
or value exchange. Doesn't have to always be financial. So an action or value exchange.
And NPS is a false question to begin with. So, well, I mean, just think about it. Would you recommend this company to someone? Would you recommend this company to someone you know? And they say, oh, well, skin in the game, advocacy. There's one problem with that, which was identified a long time ago, which was there's a question that follows that, which is, did you recommend this company to someone you know, not just would you? And the answer was, of the people who said yes, about 60% actually did, right? Which means 40% were basically BSing the whole time, right? So, it's a useless number. And there's no value to attach to it. I mean, it was useful in raising. Well, it had one use, which is it raised the discussion around advocacy.
True.
That,
See, there we are.
That was it.
There we are.
And Thomas is right. And Thomas is right because of that. Exactly.
No, I have a question for Ray. I have a question for Ray. So
you're always right.
Are we going to be doing any actual DJing, any virtual DJing at the CCE this year?
I believe we are. Once I can figure out how to make my equipment work.
We'll get it going.
So, I have one final question for you guys before we have to wrap, which is, all right. So you heard it's been a pretty long afternoon here, and you heard the panelists, and the thing that was interesting about that was, of course, they were not only, to Rebecca's point, really were seriously trying to think about these issues and problems, but they were very, to my liking, were very collegial about it. Let's just say that, and they handled it well. They were, and they were, a lot of them are old friends, and that didn't matter. So today we've had a significant amount of people who are leaders of the industry, like you and others, speaking to the biggest issues, and the biggest one was, of course, the very first, which is 8 months into this, where are we at? Okay, the closing question is, for you guys, is not where are we at, but what do you think and where do you think we're going to be in a year? Okay, and then we'll wrap with that after you each answer.
Okay, in a year, let me start. So me physically in Seattle washing. we as an industry, I do think that we will see some more move into providing value to customers and their customers. So that has accelerated. And what I do think is it will accelerate more because this whole thing will last a little longer.
Okay.
I think we have not even begun to see the impact that working from home is going to have on our applications and the way we think about our systems. So if we take CRM specifically, how both B2B and B2C sales is changing with the prevalence of Zoom / whatever you want to call it, the bringing of new tools into the B2B and the B2C sales and service environment, that sort of video plus that is not just looking at and talking to an agent, but sharing my screen, looking at an app together, making that frictionless across channels. I think we're just starting to see what opportunities and potential are there.
All right. John, why don't you take it?
Well, I hate to break it to the vendors watching, but I don't think we're going to be at the Win in Las Vegas or Orlando yet. So let's pump the tires. Let's just hold the whole thing on. I'll see you in Las Vegas in a few months. Just stop that crap. But as far as the overall change, I think Rebecca's right on, and I think it's really about understanding the new consumer is going to take some time. I think some of our behaviors are going to change forever, and it's going to be on top of all of us. If I take an optimistic viewpoint, I would say we're going to be better and faster at serving people, and we're going to be more serious about the underlying transformation. But we're all going to have to work at it. It's not going to land in our laps.
All right. And before you go, Ray, one thing for John, people should read John's series on virtual events. Seriously, it's a really, really good series on how to actually not just conduct them, but think about them. And that's half of what's missing right now is how people are thinking about them, because they're thinking about them completely wrong. And John really nails it, and it's a running series, so there's a number of posts and articles on it.
Hey,
right.
One thing.
More creativity is in order. That's all.
Oh, we didn't read it. Well, I didn't read it beforehand, so don't be judging this what we just did. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Be quiet.
Are we judgmental?
I did read it. I just ignored everything he said.
I'm with Ginger. I miss Las Vegas. But here's the thing, though. I think it's great that look, even the vendors are massively competitive. The people in the industry have been very collegial, right? But I think the thing that we have to do more is the industry has to stand up for data privacy, right? Individual privacy rights. The industry has to stand more for data sharing. You can't have issues around indirect access pop in. We've got to have standards in terms of how microservices are used so that things can be more headless. The plug and play is really expensive for our customers over the long haul. And we're seeing a lot of vendor cloud lock-in. I mean, that's the other thing that we're saying. Like before, we're like, oh, yeah, it's cloud. It's going to be great. You can just, you can ramp up, ramp down whenever you want. Try ramping down with any of the vendors. It's impossible. Like everyone's trying to protect their ACV, and we've got to be able to change that. So I think that's some of it. But where are we going to be? I think the industry is going to be in better shape. I mean, people are going to understand what the issues are. They're going to be much closer to their customers than they have been. We're not at a point where there's like 100 vendors chasing 2 customers. It's not like 10 vendors chasing 2 customers. But I think that competition got us to a certain point, and now it's more about collaboration going forward.
All right, and one last, Ray. So one last thing I'd like you to tell people. So Ray has a new book coming out. So can you give people kind of a timeline, because I don't really know when it's actually due for release. But I will say this: as I'm reading the manuscript, and it's really good. All right, that's all I'm going to say. But Ray,
it's HarperCollins Leadership is publishing it. It's a book titled "Everybody Wants to Rule the World," and it talks about what happens when those new models that Rebecca and I were kind of hinting at. Right, you're talking about network models. You're talking about massive amounts of users. You're talking about taking precision decisions and really competing on decision velocity. It's a very different world that we're entering into, and the fact that we're going to end up with a set of duopolies in every, with collapsing industries, right? And that's kind of where the future is headed. And the question then says, what do we do when that happens? How do we actually keep free and fair markets? And it ends really talking about what kind of regulations are needed to ensure those markets, and what happens when people actually start applying antitrust and these companies get broken up. So it hits on some of those issues, and we think it's coming out July 2021.
Okay,
thanks,
you,
Paul.
Oh boy! All right, that was a nice way to end it. That was a nice panel to end this 2.5 hours. We did 2.5 hours here.
Marathon broadcast.
Thank you guys so much.
Lewis Awards.
Oh, no.
Fixing the web.
No, but all seriously,
LinkedIn.
We thank you guys for joining us, man. You guys helped to make this a really great day. So thank you again.
Love you.
Hopefully we'll see you in real face-to-face sometime soon.
I hope so.
All right, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Yeah, we'll see you, Mike.
Oh, wow.
I'm speechless now. I'm
kind of tired. I'm tired too. I mean, it was a nonstop 2.5 hours of great information, great thoughts, great conversations around the board. I mean, it started with, the panel. They set the tone, the vendor panel. And I can't, it wasn't just what they said, it was how they said it. It was a real group think kind of thing. It was all about customer and industry, not about individual vendors. And I think that's what made the whole day what it was, what it ended up being.
I mean, the spirit, the content and the spirit of the day really worked. And what's fascinating was the involvement of the audience in it. I mean, it was just like,
it was
there
overwhelming.
There's got to be, all in all, 600-700 comments, I would guess. All in all, just a guess, but it was so many that you couldn't really keep count. I'm sure we'll figure it out, though.
But the funny thing was, there was actually 3 conversations going on at the whole time. There was what was being broadcast, and then there was the private channel, and then there was like inner discussions in that private channel, and then there was the public channel, and then you and I even had one to try to keep on track. So there was like conversations on like 4 or 5 different dimensions going on here. But it all added up. It all added up to a great 2.5 hours.
It was amazing. And what was really nice, honestly, I saw Paul Ward, who I haven't physically seen for years, but I've known him 15. He's actually pretty local to me. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He was the guy playing the piano while he was listening to us. And I saw my brother-in-law, Vernon Reed, who I adore. Vernon's a retired minister in Nova Scotia.
You know,
last time I saw him was last August in Nova Scotia.
When I saw the name Vernon Reed, I thought of Cult of Personality and Living Cult, whatever that band was from the 80s, Living something. But the name of the Cult of Personality, Living Color. That's it, Living Color. That's what I was like.
It was Vernon Reed. I didn't.
Yeah, that was the guy. That was the founder of the group, Vernon Reed. Anyway.
That was literally my brother-in-law, right? So it was an absolutely wonderful person with just great spirit.
But no, that was great. I mean, I just thank everybody. I thank everybody who watched the thing. I mean, and commented and added to the conversation. And of course, we have to, especially thank the 5 folks from the vendors taking time out to do that and to do it in a kind of in the framework or in the spirit of what we do here at the Playaz, which is, we can disagree, but we don't want to be disagreeable about it. We try to have fun, but we try to also talk about things that are substantive. And everybody involved in this day did exactly that.
I know, it was absolutely incredible, if we do say so ourselves. Right?
We just did.
I know. So I guess.
Any parting thoughts before we?
Well, the only one, which is how do we top it, right? So we literally have to. We literally. I mean, there's no question. The interest is there in this kind of panel. I mean, I'm not saying it'll be at this scope, but the kind of panel where we kind of deal substantively with issues that are important to people, that we can get a discussion that you're not going to get elsewhere. And maybe next time we have, CEO from Zoho and Pegasystems and, the sort of the companies who are maybe the next tier down in revenue, but every bit equal in thought leadership and experience and history, so who knows? I mean, maybe it'll be topical, it'll be based on a specific industry. It's hard to say, but I think maybe, what do you say, quarterly we do these things or so?
I say quarterly. And the only pet peeve I have is I want more people who are not Patriots fans on these panels going forward. Sorry, Bob.
It'll be hard. Yeah, but here's the problem. If we do Pega or Creatio,
oh my goodness,
right? They're Boston-based companies, so we're going to be.
We want some folks. So can somebody give me some LA-based companies that you think we should have on? Because we got to even this stuff out here. That's all I'm saying.
It was great. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and we'll let you guys know when we figure out what we're doing next with the series. But in the meantime, we do have a couple other things that we are doing. And any update at all on the BYOB?
Yeah, actually. So apparently, according to emails I've had, the first videos from one of the bands, now I won't say which, are going to drop tomorrow. That they've got all 3 of them done and they're ready to go. We also we're waiting on all 10 of the bands have committed to doing 90-second promos, which we will air on as we get them. We'll air 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever on CRM Playaz Thursday and maybe the Friday, probably Thursday show as we get them, so you can see what your competition is going to look like. Each of them has their own pages, which you will soon have access to, so you can go and start looking into the bands themselves and what they're getting ready to play. And it's looking really good. And look, let me say this. One band told me, be ready. The way they put it was, don't be surprised by a drone being involved, right? Okay, so we're talking about some heavy hitters here who are going all in to win this competition. And of course, we wanted to wait till this was over before we started really pushing and promoting BYOB, because there's a lot more time there. We've got a couple months yet before the actual videos are going up for viewing. But be ready. You're going to have 30 videos to watch, and you're going to be voting on best band, best song, and best video. And more details will be forthcoming over the next few weeks.
And we will also be giving you a little bit more information on the, what are we calling that thing? The social good, doing good? I don't know.
I thought we were originally calling it the Doing Good Award, but we'll probably, that's a placeholding name. So
yeah,
we'll give you a more polished version of what we're trying to do with the award for the company who has really stepped up, the companies that have really stepped up during the pandemic. And that we'll come back with some details, including dates and times and criteria and so on.
But we'll be back tomorrow too for Playaz Sports. Excuse the intrusion, and I just hope that one of the players is not sad or mad or something about what happens tonight.
Well, we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow. We hope to see you tomorrow. But thanks again for joining us for this 2.5, actually more than 2.5 hours. But I think it was great, and we definitely hope we can do something like this again. We'll see.
Yeah. So let's we have to do our regular.
I almost forgot.
Right.
I'm Brent Lear.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and we are out until tomorrow.
Completely out of it.